Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing for February 23rd, 2016. We'll begin with a special order calendar and continued hearing items. Item number 1, 47237BZ, 2765 Popsy Avenue, Brooklyn.
Hello, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Eric Palatnik.
You requested an adjournment on this?
We requested an adjournment. We'd appreciate if we could have 2 months. We've been briefing the issue.
Oh.
You raised good points in your last hearing, which we've been researching, and we're trying to find some information that might actually support our position.
So 2 months. Well, so is, does that mean like April 26th? Is that something?
That's
like
great.
that?
That would be
Okay.
fantastic.
April 26th with a submission on April 6th.
Thank you.
Item number 2, 19649BZ, 1280 Allerton Avenue, the Bronx.
Good morning again. Eric Palatnik on behalf of Vasilati Associates. They've asked me to appear for them to request a 30-day adjournment in order to address many of the issues that the board raised.
Oh, okay. Well, 30 days is not going to work with our calendar, so the next available hearing is April 12th.
I'm sure they'll be perfectly content with that.
Okay, and its submission is March 23rd submission.
Great, thank you.
Any speakers?
Are there any speakers on this?
Was it April 9th?
No, they didn't request an
They didn't
adjournment.
request an adjournment yesterday.
They're requesting it right now.
Yeah, they
And
called me
we talked
last
about it
night.
yesterday about the U-Hauls and,
I apologize on their behalf. They contacted me last night and asked me to
Okay.
extend.
okay, thank you.
Item number 3, 52864BZ, 2402 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Is there anyone here for this?
No, it's an
So they
adjournment.
requested an adjournment also to April 26th with a submission on April 6th.
Item number 4, 12997BZ, 150-65 Cross Island Parkway, Queens.
And likewise adjourn to April 26th with a submission on April 6th.
Item number 5, 31806BZ, 4905 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Hello, good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the board. Eric Palatnik on behalf of Sun Oil, Inc. We attended your review session yesterday, and we're glad to hear that you took note of the things that they have corrected at the site. They've been working hard, and I think the site is a lot cleaner and more presentable now than it was when we first started. So thank you for giving the tips, and I'm glad we were able to do those. There are a few things that haven't been done, well, primarily the landscaping. Obviously, we're coming into spring. If you'd like to, if it's at your discretion, but if you could either close and condition or grant us the opportunity for another month and a half adjournment so that we can come back to you maybe at the end of April to show you plantings that have been done at that point. And when they hire the landscaper for that, we'll also deal with the tree that's grown into the fence and taken over the fence.
And then replace the fence.
And replace the fence,
total
yeah,
decayed
no, of course.
wreck of a fence,
Yeah, no, we'll
right.
correct the fence.
Okay.
So whatever the board desires, and I did see the signs that the board was speaking about. I didn't get a chance after getting the pictures over the weekend to tell them to take them down, to give you new pictures, but I saw the lotto signs that they have and the flags and the banners and so forth. We'll have those removed.
Okay, great. So I think, given the compliance history on the site and kind of how long we've been at this, I'd rather see all the work completed.
Fine.
So I think we should go with that, just complete the work, and we'll give you enough time to do that. Are there any other comments here? Are there any speakers on this? Okay, so do you think the end of April 26th is enough time?
Maybe give us another month, that way we make sure that the gardeners don't get backed up. So if you wanted to give us until May.
You want a whole month, so May 24th?
Yeah, the end of May would be great.
Okay, so May 24th with a submission on May 4th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, 112281BZ, 10514 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Good morning again, Eric Palatnik. It's the morning of Astoria Boulevard. We appreciate your board reviewing the application. We attended your review session yesterday, and your board raised some very valid points. which we'd like to be able to respond to. If it would be acceptable to Madam Chair, I'll go through what we heard yesterday, and then if we happen to have missed anything, you could let us know, and we're happy to come back. The very first thing is the Community Board. The Community Board did hear it. I don't know why the letter didn't make it into your file, but they did support the application. They had the very similar comments to what the board had, primarily about graffiti. Graffiti is an ongoing problem, not just at this property, but up and down Astoria Boulevard. At this property, it's removed as soon as it's placed on the building. Unfortunately, it reappears rather quickly, but it is removed repeatedly. And we could submit photos to you showing you the site clean now. I don't know if anybody drove past it in the past few weeks. You may have seen some there. Whatever's there will be removed, but it does appear pretty soon thereafter.
Maybe what you could do is propose some kind of graffiti maintenance plan where on a bi-weekly basis or something like that, they take a walk around the property with whatever it is, a power washer or a spray can.
It shouldn't be so hard. They're a building supply company, so, and they are very diligent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a building, the nature of the business it operates is a building supply company.
Right.
So we're happy to accommodate that, and they have been. They might not have gotten to it as quick as when the commissioners came by, but they're aware of the problem.
So submit some kind of an operational plan.
An operational plan. Got it. The other thing that the board brought up was the lot next door. The lot next door, we tried to make clear in our application, but we could submit more information about it. That lot operates under its own certificate of occupancy, separately and independently from this action. It's existed presumably since pre-61. It has a valid certificate of occupancy for a contractor's yard with storage. And that's what the site is being used for.
But it's in association with this business.
It's the same business, operates both sites, but that one was not the subject of the BSA application.
But it has a C of O as a contractor's establishment in an R32 zoning district?
Yes.
So then, how? Grandfathered?
We presumably grandfathered.
Could you give us more
We'll give you more information on that. Yes, definitely. We'll give you the C of O, and we'll try and find some Sanborn maps to further substantiate the C of O. But the building has in that
But
capacity.
because it's the same establishment, it's equally, the owners are responsible for maintaining it in an orderly fashion, even if it isn't part of this
Of course.
application per se. And it's not on the same zoning lot.
No.
And it's always been used in conjunction with this business, or?
This business
Has it
just
been
took
something-
over the property a few years ago. I'm not sure the history of who owned it when, but we could delve into that a little bit more and give you more of an exhaustive history of that piece to show how it's progressed through the years. We'll go back to 61 and pull up whatever Sanborn information we can, and whatever documentation the owner may have. And the C of O, just I'm looking at my notes here, the C of O dates from '56.
Oh, okay.
So I think that
That's
should
kind
give
of
the board,
grandfathering.
a lot of comfort level in the historical usage.
So you'll provide,
Yeah, we'll provide a copy of the C of O, so that way you have it for your records.
But what about the comments we made about the condition of the fencing and the storage of materials above the fence line? I mean, if it weren't for the subject
This.
variance business, that lot would be put to some other use.
Maybe.
It's accessory to the business.
No, it's not accessory.
It's
It runs
accessory storage.
It runs independently. It's
It's-
accessory storage, what's going on in that lot. The building
Yes.
itself is not accessory to this building. There's no denotation.
No, the building is not accessory. The
Right.
building is the main business, and the lot, the storage lot, the open lot.
No, it's not an open lot. There's a building on it. There's actually, there's a contractor's establishment structure,
Yeah,
and there's an
there's a
open
small
lot next
Oh,
to it.
okay.
And it's all used independently. But I understand what you're
The
saying.
fencing is not in good
It's-
condition
it's-
and-
You know, you get the whole ball of wax. We're here, I understand that, and we've spoken to the owner. They have been trying to maintain it clean. I don't know if there's any prohibition of them stacking above the fence line. I don't know
Well,
if
it's
that's...
kind of unsightly
it's
in a residential
building
district
supplies.
to be looking at, stacked equipment above the fence line.
We'll ask them to see what they can do to clean it
The whole
up.
purpose of the fencing is to screen, from residential uses.
So maybe you could, I don't know if it's permitted, but maybe you could look at a higher fence if they have to stack so high. Maybe the name, I don't know what kind of material it is.
I'll look into that. I see what the board's concerns are with it.
I don't know what the maximum fence height is on property lines. There probably is
You
one.
could get away with probably 10 feet. You might want to look at a fence that is, aesthetically pleasing, but is also somewhat, opaque in the sense that it's not going to show sort of all of the messy stuff that's going on behind it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of theft, and that's what, I spoke to the owner about it, that's what's prompted this fence to begin with. His materials are just being stolen out of the yard at night, over and over again, so it has a security function to it as well. It does front on Astoria Boulevard, it's a little bit on the side street as well, but it's primarily on Astoria. But I'll talk to the owners about that. We'd like, if possible, to show you cleaned up first, and hopefully it would be acceptable to that. The fencing is,
Well, it's warped. The fence is like totally warped.
the metal panels are warped.
Yeah.
Maybe they
They're
could
dented.
replace,
Warped, dented, pulled up.
Yeah.
So you really need to.
maybe they could
replace-
fix up what's there.
It's just like some galvanized sheets or
Yeah.
something that's been painted multiple times.
Okay. Well, they're a building supply company, so I think they could find their way to some cleaner sheets.
Right, but it's in an R32 zoning district, so it needs to be an appropriate, I mean, obviously, that other site isn't in this application, but if there are associated businesses, then it's implicated, right? And on the border of the site in question, you need to be maintaining it.
No, of
right?
course.
Right.
I'll speak to the owner about it, and we'll see if we can fix it up so
Okay.
that we drop the materials down below the fence line and we clean up the fence. The next item that was raised is the loading at the property. Loading, and perhaps we should have been clearer in the paperwork, there is interior loading that's occurring. It's not 100% to the approved plans. The approved plans showed basically a circular drive through the warehouse. That doesn't exist anymore. And the reason it doesn't exist is subsequent to the board's last action on it, the applicant actually approached New York City Department of Transportation and secured a letter in March of 2015 allowing for no standing except trucks loading and unloading in the street in front of their facility.
But that was one of the conditions of the prior grant, was
Yeah.
all loading and unloading was to take place in the building.
Correct. So what we're asking for the permission to do now is to maintain a portion of that loading and unloading, but it's not the circular drive. They do have cars and trucks that come into the building.
So they
to
back
load and
into the
unload.
space.
They back into the space.
So they obstruct traffic on Astoria Boulevard and then cross over the sidewalk to back in.
Yes, they do. They cross over the sidewalk, they would have crossed over the sidewalk no matter what. They would have crossed over the sidewalk twice with the circular, but they do back in, they have a flagman that goes out. Most of the deliveries that occur come in, and the heavy deliveries are right out front. It's basically more of the contractors that pull up front. There's a shop inside.
Why did they change their operation? Is it because they
The
have so
property was
much in that
sold.
building?
The property was sold.
But I'm saying it's really pretty densely packed in the building. There's a lot of materials
There's a lot of building
inside the
materials,
building.
yes.
So I guess one of the questions might be that, assuming that we wanted this circular pattern to get the truck sort of off the street faster and not kind of stop traffic so that it can back up and back in, maybe the site is a little overburdened with too much stuff in.
It's
in
not
the-
that it's overburdened. The problem that they've encountered is that they can't get the trucks to the size that are coming to them into the facility to do the circular drive. They can't maneuver the truck of that length through.
So they're bigger trucks than used to be.
The site has changed, the ownership has changed now, and now it's named Newcastle Building Supply, it's a building supply company. So they're trying to accommodate their use and also stay as close in compliance with what the board's original approval was.
So maybe we need to know more about how the operation works.
We can give you some more operational
It's changed
information.
since our last grant. We should know what those changes are and why you can't.
And we'll give you the deliveries, the number of trucks. Perhaps we can give you a lot more information on the number and frequency of deliveries, the method of delivery, the size of the trucks.
And if the truck completely blocks the sidewalk,
When it
backs in.
When it backs in and it's backed in as far as it's going to go, is it still on the sidewalk? Is that
Right.
what you mean?
And we should get some interior photos, and I guess you're going to have to revise your plans.
Yes.
Also, if your plans, and it looks like they're including that storage next door, if that lot is not part of this variance, it really shouldn't be on the plans. It looks like it is. Maybe I mean, it says storage. I don't know if that's,
Oh,
No.
is that part of the building?
part of the
That's
Oh,
the
okay.
building.
All right,
And then adjacent to it is that lot.
okay.
The next substantive issue that the board raised yesterday was the mezzanine level. It's the current user's intention to cease use of the mezzanine level. The mezzanine level, we don't have your board's previously approved plans. We've searched your files and they're not available. We have only the plot plan that we submitted to your board, but the rest of your records are incomplete. And there has been a change of ownership, so we don't have the last set of approved plans, we just have the plot plan. We don't believe that the mezzanine was ever added. We think it was there originally because the mezzanine is built out of concrete and it exists in place. It's not like a wood add-on, but nonetheless, the current owner has no desire to maintain the mezzanine. They would actually like to cease its usage. They have no purpose for it at all. So what we would ask from the board, we've looked at two different things. We looked at either physically removing the mezzanine, which is quite a cumbersome and structurally cumbersome task because it's built with reinforced concrete. So we're asking in the alternative that we could cease its usage, eliminate the stairs that access it, make sure that it's code compliant with respect to the fire department regulations, and seal it up and cease its usage entirely.
And what's the reason for that? You mean,
To
it's a
remove it,
building
it's-
supply company, don't you need to store stuff? And you could actually bring things up there that are more lightweight materials and store
Or
them
use it
there?
as office space.
It was used as an office space
Right.
by the previous user. It's not really
Right.
suitable to, due to the staircase and the access to it, it's not really suitable for the storage of goods. So we have no desire to keep it at all, but the problem we run into, and we look for the board's advice, is that it's built of reinforced concrete, and the removal of it is a cumbersome task in and of itself.
But I don't understand why you want to seal it up, you want our permission to seal it up?
Well, we'd like to show on the plans that space, but just not in use.
But it would still, even though there's no stairway, wouldn't it still count as floor area?
Yeah, it does.
And don't you have to add it to whatever?
Well, that was really the question I wanted to have with the board. I don't know if it would count as floor area
Yes.
if there is no access and if it's sealed off as a
If you look
vacant
at the
space.
definition of floor area, that fits right within it.
Okay.
Space that had been operational, that's been abandoned, is specifically floor area.
So let me go back to the owner and see what they want to do. We'll either remove it or we'll include it in the application.
Yeah, I'm not really, it seems sort of short-sighted. You have this floor that maybe today the new owners can't think of a use for, but in the future they'll think of a use for it. And to the point
I'd agree.
that was raised, I forget by who, where are all the offices that were upstairs? What's going to happen to them? There's, for instance, there's no
There's a-
lunchroom anymore, there's no...
Like I said, there's a new owner that's in place. There's a
Right.
lot of their operations going from a centralized location. And there's locations all over Queens and all over the 5 boroughs. So they don't have the same needs as the previous owner did with respect to the space. But I'll speak to the owner about it.
Can you also, as part of the new operation plan, indicate how many people work there?
Sure.
And if there are any staggered hours?
Sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, how many people work there?
Yeah,
How many are employed
okay.
there?
Thanks.
Let's start.
Include all that in your operational plan.
Yeah.
We'll put all that in the operational plan. And the board had a question about the landscaping. The tree pits are dead. These trees will be replaced in the spring.
Well, there was actually landscaping required since
Yes.
1982,
Well, that's-
which was
we were
not
looking for that.
supposedly, was not done. So
Yes.
besides the 2 tree pits, there was some sort of description of landscaping on Astoria Boulevard.
I was reviewing the previously approved plans. I didn't see the site plan that we submitted to the board from the last actions, and didn't actually show any landscaping. So I wasn't quite sure what the board was referring to other than the street trees.
Yeah, we only have one plan, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, everybody's at a bit of a disadvantage with the files. But it is a site plan.
And I'm just like, where would the planting have gone other than street trees? And
That's-
other than that funny,
that's
that
what I-
little rear alley thing that you can't get to without trespassing?
Well, since they own they're using the site on 105th Street, could they put some street trees on that side?
If the board sees...
You have 2 pits on 106th Street. One of them has a live tree. There's one with nothing.
We could look into putting another tree on that side.
That, which you're talking about a street tree?
Yeah.
Okay. And on Astoria Boulevard? No. I don't know what the DOT thinks about
Well, I don't know
trees
if
on
street
Astoria
trees would
Boulevard.
be the best thing, but
Around the truck turns.
perhaps
Right.
planters.
Oh. There's areas in front of the storage area, there's areas on the corner that could handle a street tree, but I don't know whether Astoria Boulevard is in DOT's plan for street trees. Could look into what the
We'll
street
look
tree
into street
situation
trees.
is. Okay. We, so just getting back to the trucks, so then no trucks are able to make that turn anymore? Is that it?
The only trucks that can make the turn are, that they explained to me, are the panel trucks, the
Right.
smaller trucks.
And
But
they don't- they're not-
They're not really, that's not where the heavy trucking is really coming in. They have a wholesale retail component in the front. It's a small store. That's the kind of thing that a contractor would come in and pick up glue or pick up things that would fit in a van. But the bulk of the heavy deliveries that go on come in by pallet. And those are the trucks that back into the facility, and they'll load up those onto the truck, and then they'll pull them out. And
Do they
that's-
do any deliveries themselves? Do they store trucks on site? or-
They don't store trucks on sites. They do deliveries out of other locations, not out of this location.
So does that mean the plan is to abandon that turnaround area?
It's to abandon part of, probably the portion on the left-hand side, the plan is to amend that, to remove that, and to create a formal, more of a loading berth type of situation within.
Okay.
That would allow the trucks to come completely within the building, which they do now, to load up and then pull out.
Okay, so which the plans don't show.
But we'll amend the plans to show that.
Because then the area that's being abandoned, basically, that would be then given over to storage?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is basically what's occurring now. That's when Commissioner Vice Chair Hinkson
Yeah.
mentioned inside is busy. That's probably what she was witnessing.
Okay. Okay. We also had questions about the signage,
Oh, yes.
signage by frontage.
Yes, we're going to give that to you. We provided you with the sign analysis, but we're going to go through with the architect.
Okay. And then you were going to coordinate the hours of operation, or you're going to just make clear?
We'll do that. That was, I think, is
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Chanda's comment. The hours have reduced. If there's a good side here, the Monday through Friday is 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., whereas before it was to 5:30 p.m. And Saturdays was 8 to 1, now it's 7 to 11:30.
Okay. Could you also make sure the hours are on the plans?
Sure.
Okay. lighting was installed. Okay, I think that was, a construction timeline was the other thing. What's the program for actually starting and completing the work?
There really is
Find
no
out?
work, other than the mezzanine.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but also, all right, so in terms of, I thought you said there's a proposal to kind of create a formal loading dock.
No, what I meant is they would take that space and use that as a formal loading area.
Oh, I see,
You know,
okay.
the materials are stored at grade around the interior, so they would pick them up on a forklift, and they don't actually need a raised berth to back into. But I think it would help you out a lot more, and we should provide you with a very clear plan to show you how that'll work,
Okay.
how everything will fit.
Well, I think, just going back in terms of what we discussed, the mezzanine being counted as a floor area, and that's something you have to factor in, even if it's closed up, to determine how you want to address that and whether that requires removing it. And if you do decide to remove it, which is what I think I would prefer.
But why?
Why can't
I
they just
mean,
leave
they
it?
already have it, it's an existing
If it's not going
mezzanine.
to be, well, if it is going to be used, then that's how it should be reflected in the plan, and then we can analyze it. I'm just not comfortable it being there sealed up.
Oh, I got that gist. That's
So-
not one of the options I'm walking away from
Okay.
this hearing with. I'm going back to the owner and saying, either remove it or you keep it, one of the two.
Right, and then show it in the plan
I-
accordingly.
I
There doesn't
understood.
seem to be any advantage of removing it. It's
Yeah.
gonna cost a lot of money and you get nothing
Yeah.
for it.
Right.
Unless you needed more
I've been there, they've
height.
got it filled with junk now, and the owner's
Right.
purpose is, like it says to me,
Right.
is it's just another place for people to get into that I don't want people
Yeah.
getting into for any reason.
I mean,
But
I
it's-
understand if this were the type of storage thing like at a Home Depot where the height of the ceiling is really important and you have all of those racks, then the mezzanine's in your way and you want to get rid of it so you can add more racks.
Yeah, no, actually here, it's not in the way, it's at all, it's because the office is below it. So
Oh, right,
it's not
okay,
in the way
so-
of anything, there's nothing stored, so. But I'll present, I understand the board is not, doesn't like that idea, and that was something we wanted to discuss with you today. and
I don't think the
yeah,
fire
so-
department would like it either.
Yeah.
I mean, an abandoned, scary.
I'm seeing the fire department shake his head no from Chief
Yeah.
Scaduto. So I'll present it to the owner, either keep it or eliminate it, one or the other.
Talking about
Sorry,
the fire, go ahead.
I just actually heard about spontaneous combustion in abandoned spaces. Isn't that creepy?
I thought you were going to mention people who spontaneously combust. I've seen that too.
Talking about
Yes,
the
but that's
fire
a whole
department.
another story.
There was a condition in the prior grant about installing a firewall on the east side of the building. I believe that was a firewall between the storage area and the sales area, which was supposed to have these trucks come in and make this circular turn. So I'm a little concerned about this building chock full of stored materials and trucks backing in and fire code.
But how does it normally work? Most warehouses are like that.
Right, but I
You
mean
pull
in
in,
terms
load
of the
stuff.
proximity to a truck or the proximity to loading, there was a requirement previously in the grant to install a firewall.
Yeah, but that's when the truck was actually going in, like, fully inside the building
Moving
and
around.
coming
Driving.
around. I would imagine that you would be sprinklering the building. You've got all of that
It's a bit,
combustible stuff in there. You probably
We'll take a
run
look to
sprinkler.
with the architect and I'll
So you
ask him.
just need to, coordinate with the architect and make sure that the use and the fire code jive.
is the building sprinklered? Can you find out?
I'll find out, I don't know.
Yeah, it should be.
So the 82 variance that allowed the enlargement of the use, do you know how much of the building was enlarged? I mean, so in other words, in 82, there might have been sprinkler requirements for this. That's part of why I was asking.
No, I'm not familiar off the top of my head with that, but we'll
Okay.
take a look into the files.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Are there any speakers on this? Okay. So we still have space on April
we could-
12th, if you think that's enough time?
No, I don't, if we could submit maybe in May, that'll give us,
Okay, May, you have a lot of options because it's open, 3, 17, or 24.
we could submit on the 3rd.
Okay, so May 3rd for submission on April 13.
Thank you.
Sure.
Item number 7, 20108BZ, 40-38, 216th Street, Queens.
Hello, Mr. Rothkrug asked me to appear for him as well.
You're a one-man show.
They know I'm here, I guess, and their offices are not in Manhattan proper, so I think these questions, I was familiar with the first instance of it, and I could probably help you with some of the questions that the board had yesterday. I believe you had 5 questions. The first one was, has any work occurred yet? Construction has not yet started. The delays that have been going on for the past year or so have been with the switching of an architect. They've just recently retained a new architect. The design plans are just being created right now. They're waiting on the board's okay now for the architect to start doing DOB drawings.
So I saw that in the statement of facts, so I was a little confused. The architect's drawings that we have are Kutnicki Bernstein, is that not the architect?
That's not going to be the architect moving forward.
So then, is KB providing the drawings for us, and then the new architect will assume?
No, we're working off the approved plans that the board approved. Those are going to be
Okay.
the plans, the design, but the Department of Buildings drawings need to be
okay.
created. Those were going to be done by a new architect.
Okay.
Maintaining all the same bulk characteristics and attributes is in the board's approval.
Okay,
Nothing is changing from your
Nothing
approval.
will change,
Nothing
okay.
is going to change except for the architect. And they're waiting, the architect and the owner are waiting to make sure that the board is okay with renewing before they proceed to the next step, because that'll be the first thing that Department of Buildings will say when they get to Department of Buildings.
okay. Right.
That was actually the first 2 questions the board had. The third question was, are there any changes to the zoning? There are no zoning changes at all from what I'm told. There has been a change in the building code, which changed in 2008, and the proposed construction will comply and conform to all standards of the current building code.
So, are there any changes to the plans that are needed in order for that to happen, is the question?
I can confirm that.
Because, well, it's only a one-story building, so I'm not sure, there's probably no staircase, but normally it would have affected your staircase. But it may have affected the size of egress, I don't know. They should check whether there's an effect on,
I will find that out.
okay. And,
The current fence, we know, is in disrepair. That's as part of the larger scope of work with everything. It's all going to be done at the same time.
so you're saying, so, all right, but part of it is while we're waiting for construction to start, and during construction, the site has to be kept in an orderly fashion, right?
Of course. There'll be a construction fence that's actually going to go up during the construction.
Right.
But
And
what
then
about
after
now?
that, the site work.
What about now?
Well, we're
Construction
hoping,
could be, a couple of years from now, so what about?
we're ready to start construction right away, so we could go and we could apply for a construction fence right now,
Yeah.
if the board would like.
And the site is pretty overgrown with weeds.
Right. Yeah, why didn't you apply for a construction fence now and get it up, and then no one can
I'll
see
bring that
the
back.
wreckage behind?
Behind it, I'll bring that up to them,
Okay,
except when you pass on the Long Island Railroad.
okay. All right, so actually,
I have,
any other questions? Yeah.
can you also provide a construction timeline?
Yes.
Yes, that was the next question. Is it 12 to 18 months is the anticipated timeframe for the work to be done, but we could put that in writing for you.
Yeah, if you could provide a little bit more clarity from the time the drawings are submitted and approval process and when.
We'd be happy to.
Have you started identifying contractors, general contractors?
No, nothing is, we're waiting on the new architect with the plans, and then we're going to be bidding it out while it's undergoing review with Department of Buildings.
Oh, so you're not able to start construction right away other than a construction fence, unless you're
No,
going to
but
do...
we anticipate the construction fence, but once we get plans filed with the Department of Buildings, it should only take a few months to get the,
Right.
at the same time, the same few months it takes to get the plans reviewed and approved at DOB.
Right.
The job will be bid out during that same time.
Right, so, okay, so we're talking about not getting started with construction for,
Probably 2-3 months from the time the board acts on it.
okay, so then that's why you really need to get a fence up there that
Okay.
conceals and...
It's
right?
reasonable.
That you could get right away, I don't think there's any...
I don't think there'll be a holdup with the construction
Right,
fence. It's not
okay.
dependent upon the plans.
All right, any other comments on this? No? All right, are there any speakers on this? Okay, so I think we can close this, but you need to submit these materials.
We can.
So, you'll provide us with a construction timeline,
Yes,
and you'll verify that the plans don't need to be changed to reflect 2014 code,
correct.
especially because now there's a new architect, so you haven't had KB look at the plans, right, since
Correct.
then. So have a new architect look to verify,
Okay.
okay? Because otherwise, unfortunately, you'd end up having to come back here to like change a door.
Yeah, no, it's
Right.
not the desire, it's not the intent. The intent is
Right.
to not waste your time.
Okay. Okay, so for a motion to close?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Okay, so, what do we do? Finding glass. See, this is one where it'd be good to just do it. Yeah? Yeah, but it's, what? Yeah, how much time do you actually need to do that work?
To do the fence?
Yeah, maybe we should we wait until the fence is up? Sure. All right, so then, yeah, so in that case, that probably works, to get the permit for the fence and install the fence. So we could set a decision date for April 5th. No, I didn't want to put anything on here. That's okay. Yeah, okay, April 5th with a submission on March 16th. Is that, you think that's enough time? Maybe not.
Worst can be, is they'll ask you for an adjournment.
Rather not.
Then maybe give us till April to do the work.
Okay, so then how about the 26th of April to come and to submit on April 6th?
Perfect.
Good.
Item number 8, 231-10BZ, 440 Park Avenue, Brooklyn.
Eric Palatnik again.
Really?
But this one is the best of the best of the best of any job or applicant that I've ever represented. This is Williamsburg Infant and Early Childhood Development Center, which is a fantastic organization, just for your own edification. As commissioners that were here last time, they may recall it. They service incredibly disabled and impaired children with abnormalities and physical deformities that are go beyond the normal. They really treat the extreme end of the spectrum, and it's a fantastic not-for-profit. We're here now because they're still in the process of raising money to build this beautiful building that the previous board had acted upon, and we're graciously asking you for as much time as you can give us, although we're anticipating starting construction within the next year. We do still have some funding goals that we're trying to achieve in order to fund the building. We attended your review session yesterday, there have been no substantive changes in the immediate area surrounding them, and the trucks that are parked on the site are parked by local businesses that surround, rent space from Williamsburg Infant to park their trucks on the site right now. They could be eliminated in a moment's notice, but we'd hope that you wouldn't require that, because part of the funding comes from every nickel they can grab, and some of that is from the trucks that park there right now.
Is there a C of O for the site?
I don't know if there's a C of O for the site.
Sort
We
of
can find out.
vacant? I mean, if this is going to be going on for a long time, if fundraising is going to be going on for a long time, maybe you want to get a C of O for parking?
There's a small building on the site. I always thought it was a gas station or something.
No, I believe there was a gas station next door.
Oh,
On the
okay.
corner. But no, not at this site. I don't think it was a gas station. We'll take a look at the C of O, and that's a good advice if they need one. Like I said, I think they can remove the trucks at a moment's notice if they needed to.
But if it's in an M1 district, that kind of use would be allowed as
Would be allowed as
accessory
a,
parking.
yeah.
Right? Okay, so,
My only concern was that none of the users should further exacerbate the environmental condition of the site, which would be something that you want to be cognizant of when doing site improvements prior to the construction. So that's one of the reasons I just had brought that
Raising
up.
it.
okay. So I think, are there any other comments, questions, anything open here? Okay. I just want to make sure, I'm pretty sure you did provide clean plans with, that doesn't have the hand markups?
Yeah, I think so. I think you did in your last submission. I was just trying to find it, and I looked through it, and I didn't see. I think he provided.
Okay, it's not ringing a bell to you? Well, we
It's not,
had
it's-
one set.
You had
was-
one with hand notes on it? Notes on
Yeah,
it?
sort of like somebody who'd taken a, like.
I'll double check and make sure that you have it if you can't see in the file. I don't have those plans with me
Yeah, but
now,
I
so.
can I close if it's substantively the same thing?
2/3/2/16,
But I
2016, I've got new plans,
Oh, so you have them?
previously approved ESA plans.
So you have them?
And I think they're not marked up.
Yeah, just one second, because if, I'd like to bring this to vote if we can, so,
Yeah,
Yeah, it looks clean.
but I can't do it if it's a marked up set.
right.
Well, we don't approve it.
I think you did, I think you put those to it.
Looks good.
Yeah,
Looks
so I think
fine.
we're good.
Yes?
Yeah.
Good, okay, thanks. All right, so are there any speakers on this? All right, so for a motion to close?
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve this with a condition that if there's a long delay before construction starts, that efforts are made to legalize the truck parking
fair
if
enough.
it's not.
Thank you.
So accessory parking for the local businesses. And what's the longest we can do? 4 years extension? Is that, I think that's the longest. So for a 4-year
We'd
extension?
appreciate the time, and hopefully we
Okay.
won't need it.
Okay. All right, so for a motion to grant on that condition?
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Item number 9, 2-11BZ, 117 7th Avenue South, Manhattan.
Good morning, Ariel Holzer for Goldman Harris, representing the owner. Good morning, Commissioner, good morning, Chair. I attended the executive session yesterday, and I believe that for the most part, the board did not have any issues with the application, except Commissioner Chanda asked about the current plans for the enlargement. My understanding is that there has been no change in the plans, so the previously approved BSA plans are still the current plans.
You mean, when you said existing plans, were you referring to something that's existing on the site?
Actually, that's
Yeah.
the word to, yes. Because I was trying to understand how the addition that was being added, because from the elevation, it almost looked like the third floor that is currently there will be divided into 2 floors, is that so? Because
No,
just from the renderings, I'm kind
I
of
believe what
trying to
they're doing
assess.
is they're recladding their third floor, so it'll now match lower floors, and then adding the floor above that, so that would be the glass and
Okay.
steel enclosure,
Okay.
so that's...
I'm fine with that.
Okay, good. Any other comments about this? Okay, are there any speakers on this? So I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
I got everybody, right?
You got everybody. And you got her twice.
Twice, yeah, okay. So
And for a motion to grant.
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 10, 3515A, 2001 Bartow Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay, this one, we're going to postpone, but it's not to postpone decision, it's to postpone a reopening of the hearing, I guess. Do we reopen and then
You reopen,
adjourn?
I think you reopen it to, on the next hearing. You're not going to
Reopen on the next
You're not
hearing.
discussing it
Okay,
anymore,
so
right?
we're going to postpone it till
We're deferring it till March
till
22nd, right?
March 22nd, unless I'm really, hold on one second.
Sorry.
Did we already get Bartow on here?
Yeah, it is.
What is it, 3515?
Just deferring the decision.
No, we're not deferring the decision.
No, the decision, the things are already submitted.
No, we're not making any decision.
3515.
Did you say 22nd?
This is a really bad one. We don't have it on here
You
already.
said March 22nd, right?
Oh, no, it's not.
Well, we've already
We already agreed to
reviewed,
this.
yes, okay. So we're going to postpone till 3/22. Materials, I believe, have all been submitted. And it's not for decision. We're going to reopen it to consider the new materials that were already submitted by both sides. Okay. Okay. There were a lot of materials, so.
Item number 11, 6515BZ, 6615A, 361 Central Park West, Manhattan.
We received a request from the applicant to defer the decision until our next hearing date, which is March 8th. We will comply with that request, so this will be up on March 8th.
Item number 12, 2016 748A and 2016 749A, 10808 and 108-10 Shorefront Parkway, Queens.
Okay, I don't know if anyone's here for this, but all we need to do is we need to reopen the hearing. So for a motion to reopen,
Chair Palmetto?
aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye. And then the motion is to remove from the decision of January 22nd, 2016, the approval of these two properties, 108-08 and 108-10 Shorefront Parkway, Queens. So on that motion, motion to approve.
Withdraw, right?
To withdraw, right.
Withdraw?
Withdraw.
Chair Palmetto?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Continued hearing items, item number 13, 16314A through 16514A, 502, 504, 506 Canal Street, Manhattan.
Chair, Commissioners, Jeremiah Candreva for the applicant. I attended yesterday's review session. Thank you for the list of enumerated items that I'm prepared to discuss today, but at least it gives us clarity on what the Commission is seeking on the application. But before we go into that, I would like the opportunity, please, to introduce my client, Mike Marino, who would like to address the Commission. Thank you.
State your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Michael Marino. I'm the leaseholder of 502, 504 Canal Street. Me, my partner Ken Hart, and my son Michael. We leased the property from Ponte for 37 years, and we pay $200,000 a year in rent. Plus. And I want to give you the history of the project. When we leased the project, as you know, the buildings were dilapidated and they were falling down for many years. And we saved the buildings, we restored the buildings. We spent close to $4 million doing this. And in doing so, it was never our intention to spend $4 million and put ourselves in the position that I'm standing here right now. I hired professionals, I paid professionals, I asked questions because I'm a professional, and I got answered by my professionals that I was not in the flood zone. I was very aware of what the flood zone is because I was the first applicant in Rockaway to build a house under the new Sandy guidelines, which I accomplished, so I was familiar with it. When I hired my architect, SRA, the first question I asked them was, what are the Sandy guidelines here? and I was told that we were fine because we were in a landmark building. So, of course, I proceeded and spent $4 million on a project that right now is making me lose many nights' sleep. I'll deal with my professionals in a legal manner when this is all done, but I want to let the board know that we are doing everything in our power to rectify this problem. But there are certain things that you're asking that simply cannot be done or need to be modified. I understand that my situation has nothing to do with your situation, but I still want you to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not the guy who came and was a wise guy and thought that he could take these buildings and turn them residential illegally. I would not do that. I would not lease and pay $200,000 a year rent and spend $4 million to endeavor on a project like that. I own many other projects, and we spent, there's no loans we spent because it was a lease deal. We spent all our savings on building this project, which, as we all know, is in peril now. So I'm not asking for relief, I'm just asking for, I wanted the board to understand where I'm coming from, and that when I hired my professionals again, I asked the question because I was very familiar, and I live at 250 Beach 130th Street in Rockaway, and if you look it up, you'll see I was the first applicant of record in that area, and I was the first guy to build the post-Sandy house. Thank you.
So are you saying that you entered a flood zone after FEMA revised their maps?
I live in Rockaway, I lost my
No,
house.
I'm talking about Canal Street.
No, I'm saying that when I leased the property, I asked the question, are we in a flood zone, and does this affect my residential plans that I'm turning to turn 3 buildings into residential properties? And my architect told me no.
Also, that it was definitely an error. It wasn't a change in the FEMA flood maps or anything.
He told me that it never came up and it was not an issue. I didn't ask once either because I'm a very redundant person. I asked 7 times. And after you're told no 7 times, you say, okay, you have to rely on the professionals that you're hiring. Because I went through it, and the only reason I asked 7 times is because I went through it in my own home. I lost my house in Sandy, and when I went to rebuild, I understood what the floodplains and the different change in elevations and everything according to that. Now, as of today's date, we have spent a fortune trying to comply. I know you think that we're not trying to comply, but we are trying to comply. And even though, listen, as a builder, I feel some things are redundant, I give up, I'll do them. But there's certain things I can't do. I can't fill a basement in because it's just physically, humanly impossible. Engineering-wise, it's impossible. But I can waterproof the basement as per, we have a report, right? We have a report from an engineer. And I can put the aqua fence in the courtyard, but I can build a permanent wall, a permanent waterproof wall instead. So I just, I hope we could come to a reasonable solution here.
Okay. I appreciate you coming. I actually really wish you had come about a year ago, because the impression that we got was that all of the work was being done in intentional ignorance of all the regulations. And so each time, for instance, we didn't know when we started that the building had already been renovated. So we were working on the idea, for instance, why can't you modify the heights of the floors so that you would stay above the
Which would have been simple. We rebuilt the whole, I want you
No,
to understand, we restructured
I know, but
the whole entire building.
But we were sort of led to believe, let's say, that the work had not been done when we first started reading these applications. So we said, well, there's no reason why you can't comply with this, raise the floors. And we were given explanations for why it wouldn't work if you raised the floors, and landmarks was blamed and all of stuff. Let me just finish. And so then finally we learned, oh, but the real reason for that argument is that the work is already completed. So then we worked on that for maybe 3 months that way, right? And then the next thing was, we started to work on the assumption that the building was vacant so that we could make the corrections to a vacant property. And then we learned, not because we were told by any of your representatives, we learned it by doing our own investigation, that the places had been rented to tenants. Now, after that, we were very upset because this is a very tricky application. It's not something that any of us feel very good about. But now we were dealing with tenants whose lives and property are at risk as a result of this, right? So we have been trying to come to some sort of solution, working with your experts, and it's just been really, really slow in getting responses. And so had we talked to you, we might have been able to move
Which was my mistake.
more quickly. So,
But
okay.
the real ignorance fell on Alan Gary, who came to this board and just talked about nothing, just thinking that he was going to fool you people and accomplish something, which we understood later, and Alan Gary does not work with SRA anymore. He was subsequently fired. I mean, he just came here thinking that he could backtrack for his mistakes.
Well, actually, he was very responsive to our request.
He was.
When we expressed total terror at the beginning of this application, and he quelled our fears by coming up with very creative solutions. But we kept going with it because we needed to know more, and those additional requests, we stopped getting really much in the way of a response. We didn't see, other than the floodgates being delivered to the site and installed for a test, we didn't see anything else happening. And we've been talking about this for a very, very long time already.
So we put the pumps in the
Okay.
cellar. We bought and installed, you saw, the floodgates. We raised the electric service. We put the check valve. We installed the check valve in the cellar. All right, when we put the sump pumps in. We could not raise the gas meters because it's a little contradictory to the engineer's report. And the gas company also says that those gas meters could be underwater
Again?
in the case of a flood, which is also contradictory.
Well, then I think you have to provide information to that effect. If the equipment is flood-proofed, then we need certain certifications or verifications from the manufacturer that all the fittings and the meters are actually able to be submerged.
We can do that, that's not an issue.
Yeah, and if you actually have, like Con Ed, say that this was okay, if you have something in writing from Con Ed, or that would be helpful as well, that they approved it.
But again, as I said, the meters are already raised, the electric meters. Of course, they
Yeah,
get
they're,
underwater.
right, those obviously. No, I mean, it's just that we're going by what the flood regulations tell us, that all the equipment, all the services have to be
I
above,
understand,
right?
and I'm here to comply. I thought I was compelled at this point because I've been fighting with my architect, I've been fighting with my lawyer, and I've actually started a lawsuit against my architect, which I don't think they know yet, but they'll know this week.
They know, we
They know
know,
now.
they know. A lot of other people will know.
So, you know, we're doing the best we can, and we're trying to fix a situation that I spent so much money, it's extremely frustrating to me after spending $4 million renting the property from Ponte, who, you know, he doesn't care if we have a problem, you know. He's getting his rent regardless every month. And I want to resolve the issue.
Okay. So can you talk about, do you have your engineer here by any chance? No.
I have my architect here, I have
But
my lawyer here.
you said it was your engineer who told you that you
We have
can't
the
raise.
engineer's report.
Okay.
Well, this Vidaris report is really an architect report.
Yeah.
It's signed by two architects.
Okay,
It's
I could-
not sealed or signed by an
I
engineer.
could get an engineer's report. It's
Okay,
not a-
so the thing is, Vidaris had a number of recommendations that need to be implemented, and that was a question about how in the world would you get the aquafence through the window into that? So,
We figured out that we could build a permanent waterproof wall in that section. And this way, we could turn it into a planter or,
so it'll block the window then?
no, it'll block the water from the, where you're asking is the penetration is between the buildings, not up
Right.
against the glass sliding door.
Okay. So, one second. Sorry. So one of the things that you said is that you can't raise the cellar slab. Could you talk about that a little bit more? The reason I was asking if you have an engineer, because you said the engineer
I have,
advises against it.
Sewer, and I have water service, and, we put the sump pumps in,
Right.
which we would have to take out if I raised the slab, and raising the slab, if it really wouldn't accomplish anything as far as hydrostatic pressure, because the water's still gonna come up through the sides, if it did come up there, which is the reason why we put the sub pumps in.
Well,
what-
the filling in the cellar would stabilize the foundation walls.
No.
Because right now, what you're going to have, if you're trying to dry flood-proof that space, you're going to have water pressure, maybe 8 or 10, 8 feet high, pressing against those masonry walls. And they're not really constructed for that. You're trying to keep the basement...
It's a tied-in construction, and I would be more than happy to bring an engineer here to explain it.
Well, I think part of the certifications, if you're trying to dry flood-proof, have to do with doing calculations to show that the
Which I could
the
do.
hydrostatic pressure...
I would,
But the existing foundation will stay.
You, sorry, if you
Right,
speak, you have to
because
come
when
up
I
and
read the
speak.
Vidaris reports and they're
that's
just going to paint some mortar on, water, that's not adequate. It's a structural wall. And looking at it, you have your conditions for residential use, and one of the conditions is any space below the level of your first floor will not be below the level of your adjacent grade.
I
And, okay.
have no problem supplying a engineer's report.
Well, I think you may have to beef up your walls below the level of your first floor.
If it was the case, we would do it, but I don't think it's the case.
Well, I've never seen any calculations showing that they're adequate. And the Vidaris
Okay, so we need
report
to
with
supply
these,
that.
like, coatings to put on is not going to do it. And also, the floor level, the slab in the crawl space, is that dirt or is that concrete? Is it a
Concrete.
reinforced concrete slab?
Concrete slab.
That also has to be, because there's hydrostatic uplift, right? So these things have to be designed to withstand, if you're going to go for a full dry floodproofing certification.
And this-
And we've never seen that, those calculations.
Okay, so we'll supply those calculations.
Okay,
It's not a problem.
okay.
You understand that you're really going to have potentially a bathtub under your houses that will fill up with water.
Which is why we put the sump pumps in.
But they're not going to be able to handle all of that water,
And why we
right?
put the check valve in, because most of the water comes up through the
From-
sewage,
Right.
not through the slab.
Well, it comes up
It's
through the
okay.
water
This is
table.
an engineer's report.
Right.
That I'm really not, I'm a builder, and this is past my,
Okay.
Because I believe it was even Aquafence and Vidaris who also recommended putting some type of a pump in the sidewalk or a drain. What, was it a drain?
Between
or-
the aquafence, just in case
Yes.
water did leak through,
well, the
they
reason
could
for
pump it
that, the
over.
reason for that is because the sump pumps are gonna pump to the outside, and they're gonna pump into the aquafence. So now you have to take the water from the aquafence and pump it over
Out,
the fence.
Right. So there was an additional pump that needs to be installed on the other side.
Correct, otherwise, what we pump out from the cellar.
Comes right
is gonna
back in.
build up inside the aquafence, so we need to get the water from there.
Right.
To the outside,
Okay,
which is not, it's not a very hard thing to do.
okay. The other
Additional
thing,
piece of equipment.
the other thing that we were concerned about, and I know the fire department was, and we're going to have them speak, had to do with the second means of egress from these houses, that there isn't one at all. And I don't think this is actually a very expensive fix. It's one idea I had, I'll let the fire department suggest others, the architect can suggest others, is that you only have one flat roof. So you could have the tenants of the other two buildings egress onto their setback with a hatch, and then, or I don't know where the window levels are, maybe they can even just climb through the window, and then run to the building that has, is that 502? The building with a flat roof, then they would be able to go by ladder up to the roof of 502, and then the fire department could rescue them with a ladder truck, because right now they're...
All three buildings have a flat roof
Yeah.
in the back.
Oh, they
They
do?
all have egress to the back.
They have egress to
They have
the
a door out to the
backyard,
patio.
to the back, but then
Right.
you're in this place where nobody can get to
No,
you.
I understand.
Right. Okay, so if they all have that, then you just need a ladder to the roof, right? The fire department will clarify, but I
We
think,
could have a fire department
Okay.
plan, and,
that'd be great.
you know,
Okay.
that is not a problem.
Okay, and the other thing was the aquafence. When we talked to the aquafence installers, they were recommending an anchoring installation as opposed to it just sitting on the gaskets on the sidewalk.
I'm in the process now of buying for a 2,000 lineal feet of aquafence, and they didn't recommend locking it into the sidewalk.
For what application?
The same application as we're doing now.
On
Except
Canal
in a-
Street?
No, in a commercial building, another building.
On a commercial building. I don't know, that's what, I believe that's what our conversation with them.
It had to do with floating debris?
I would have to speak to aquafence and understand how we lock it into the,
Okay,
I wouldn't want to depend on that, because that's something that I think would require a foundation. And the way the aquafence is designed, you know, comes like this, it comes like this, so that we wouldn't need that.
that what?
The way the aquafence is designed, it's designed to do this, so
Right.
I don't see how that would help us by locking it into the ground.
It would prevent it from being moved
No,
horizontally
it's
by
purposely
floating.
designed, it's purposely designed not to be locked in. There are other fences that you could lock into the foundation, but aquafence is not
But
one.
what if it's hit by a 12 by 12, floating in from the river?
Well, if a 12 by 12 floats in the river, I think the fence is gone.
Well, it was a very common occurrence during Sandy. Pieces
I had a
of...
boat in my driveway.
Right, exactly.
Well, it's not going to withstand a boat even.
No, but it
with
might
an
withstand
anchor.
a 12 by 12.
It's a discussion for aquafence.
Okay, so the thing is, we had a list that I think your attorney must have given you of things that we...
I'm going to let him
Right, so,
take it from there.
and, okay, so...
I just needed to explain the history of the project. 'cause
I
it's not,
appreciate that you came.
A bunch of developers trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. We hired professionals to
Okay.
take care of our problem.
We-
And here we are. It happens.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for
your time.
coming.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Jeremiah Kendriva, I'm here with Adrian Figueroa, who will come to the mic as well. We have your list of enumerated items, and we can provide you, if the Commission doesn't mind, I'd go through the list very quickly. We can provide you with proof of installation of the sump pumps. Michael spoke about the gas meters being submergible. We can provide you with a letter from Con Edison that shows that they are fine to be submerged. We
So,
can-
some proof of installation of some pumps, the check valve, just take
Yes.
photographs?
Yes.
Okay.
We can provide that to you. With respect to the installation of the Vidaris recommendations, we can provide you with proof, in fact, that those are done. We're going to ask the Commission, please, to consider 6 months to allow us to do all of the work so that we can have a sufficient amount of time, we can come back to you. We will provide you with evidence that the notice is posted in the common mail rooms. We will work with you and the fire department on the evacuation plan to have an acceptable evacuation plan. We will be responsible for vacating, ensuring that the buildings are vacant prior to the time in which the door shield is installed. We will follow up with, we have an application, by the way, we have an application at Landmarks for the approval of the neoprene shields. Landmarks informed us yesterday that they wanted to know the outcome of today's hearing, so we're in discussions with them. But we understand that the board is comfortable with the neoprene shields, assuming that we can provide you with a letter from an engineer that shows that the neoprene seal actually works, because Landmark structure is not necessarily square.
Right.
So we can provide that to you as well. The location of the storage at this point, we've designated a location that's 4 blocks away. We hope that that's sufficient and acceptable to the board. We will revise our plans to show the configuration of the Acra fence. Mike, and you just spoke about the anchoring system, and we will speak with Acra fence about that. We will revise the plans to show the ladder and the emergency ladder and the pump locations. We will provide you with a certificate of no effect from Landmarks as soon as we are able to obtain it. We will work with the board to make sure that the fire department is satisfied with respect to the manner in which the Acra fence and shields are installed and stored. Obviously, I'll work with counsel on the legal instruments, and we will revise the statement and the plans accordingly.
Okay, and in terms of storage location, you'll, in the documents, tell us the actual address?
Yes.
So this becomes part of the record?
Yes.
Inside? Okay. More than the record, part of the advice to tenants, and so that everyone's on notice.
That's correct.
That's where those shields are in case somebody forgets.
And we will revise the application to indicate it's a legalization. The address is 260 Spring Street, but we will...
Right, you said that in the
Thank you.
statement of fact.
We will revise the application materials to include all of that.
Okay.
And you're going to correct all the references to the design flood elevation that were incorrect?
Yes, we will correct the design...
LPC plans were not correct,
Yes,
and the Vidaris report.
yes, to the extent there are inaccuracies, we will fix those.
And then you're going to hire an engineer to do all the design calculations regarding the loading due to hydrostatic pressure of dry flood proofing the crawl space?
Yes, Commissioner Martinez.
And actually, you're not dry flood proofing below the base flood elevation, but... And anything that requires a certification that's in the,
In
304,
G304 1.1, we will provide those certifications to
okay.
you.
And you understand, like, you're going to revise your statement regarding what you comply with?
Yes.
But you understand, because I asked for that a number.
Yes, you have, and we will.
Okay. So the only one that you will actually comply with is the utilities and equipment? The other ones you will not comply with?
That may be. I need to go through them all, but yes,
Of the 5?
yes.
Okay.
Although the gas,
Well, that's the only
Yeah,
one.
that's right,
If
yes,
you can
that's right,
prove that
yes.
that is,
Right.
you know, something that can be below, you know, underwater, that's the only one you will comply with?
That's right.
Of the 5 requirements?
yeah.
All right. Any other comments on this? Yes, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, I had a question. Could you explain the difference between the previously mentioned trigger for this being the flood watch, flood warning, to now moving to a high tide event? And what does that mean? What's the difference? Because previously we thought it was going to be based on a flood watch, flood warning situation, and now it's a high tide event triggered by 10 feet over low tide. What does that mean for this?
Adrian, can you speak to that? We'd have to get back to you with respect to the genesis of that comment, but we
Yeah.
will.
It should be the standard, whatever the standard regulation is for when people are advised that they're going to need to be evacuating it.
But whatever the requirement is to notify individuals of a storm event or a flood event, we'll obviously comply with that.
It used to be that, you switched it.
Right,
Yeah.
just
now,
switched
so
with this
We,
submission.
we just don't know what the difference is and where that came from, so,
Okay.
okay. Okay. And Susan, you had a comment?
I think you answered it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Okay, I think, and then you're going to revise the plan to show the wall that's in the courtyard, the permanent wall in the courtyard?
The proposed wall, yes.
Yeah, well, you're going to, you're going to revise the plans, you're going to install the wall, right?
Correct. That's
Because
correct.
the whole idea is that in 5 months, and so now that the owner's here, this is what this is about. We've been giving deadlines, and then nothing's provided. So if in 5 months, if that's enough time, or if
Do
you can do
6.
it... Sorry, 6?
6, please.
If in 6 months, you've done all of the things that are on the list, then we can be finished here. The reason this keeps dragging out is because we haven't seen those things, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so, all right, I'd like to hear from the fire department. Thanks.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Anthony Scaduto, representing the Fire Commissioner. The whole course of this project, today we've gotten a lot more answers, and I'd like to appreciate the owner coming. Our biggest problem with putting together the evacuation plan and the fire safety plan so that the applicant is aware of where we're coming from. Our real position on this project, which is just not possible, is that all of the safety should be passive. We really have issues with everything that's going to, by plan, go into effect based on a flood warning. We want that evacuation and safety plan to really be firm in terms of procedure of how are we going to retrieve the aqua fences, how are they going to be installed. In terms of the engineering, the fire department is going to step back and look at what buildings department considers normal in terms of installation, whether it should be locked down or whether it's going to be placed down and rely on the water pressure to keep it in place. Because basically aqua fence relies on the high water to actually keep it and hold it in place. Floating debris, and I don't know where there would be floating debris in New York Harbor. I mean, it's just, that part of it, again, the evacuation plan is going to have to really zero in on that. Our biggest issue is the notification to the tenants and to get them out prior to some kind of a deadline. In terms of the fire department, what we're also going to need, again, part of the evacuation plan, so we're not asking for it today. The difference between an occupied and unoccupied building, we're going to need some kind of firm conditions of how we can be assured that the building is evacuated so that we don't have to be performing rescue in an empty building. So a lot of it is going to rely on the evacuation plan that's going to be put into effect. But again, the general feeling of the fire department is we really would prefer past, the wall is a wonderful thing. That rear wall was going to be an issue because we didn't believe there was any way that was going to be able to be done during the emergency event. So that courtyard wall is a big positive, and we're just, we're going to rely on what's given us for the evacuation plan, and that's it. We're not happy about the case, but we're willing to work with the engineers and see if it works on paper.
So, but the idea is that we're going to have a ladder that goes over the gates, right?
It's really, there's the two issues. Of course, the major issue is if everything is in place, the people shouldn't really require that second means of egress
Right.
during a flood condition.
Right.
And that's really what we're relying on in terms of being able to come forward and support the project.
Yeah.
In terms of an emergency condition such as fire or whatever, it would be based, those buildings, it would be the same response that we always had for those particular buildings. And the addition of the rear yard doors and the emergency egress with the fence is, you know, it's a plus. And again, buildings will review it and approve it. We're really looking at it in terms of a condition like major floods, like Superstorm Sandy.
Right.
And,
So just a question in terms of the evacuation plan, would it be something like once the building is evacuated, the doors are labeled?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as, you know, confirmed evacuated being something, you know, that's actually imprinted on the window covers, the proposed window covers or the doors.
okay.
That's really going to be signage, and it will be part of the, you know, the final thing. So that's pretty simple. It's just that we want confirmation that those buildings are empty once the physical barriers are put on the doors and windows. And again, you know, we'll rely on the board to make the decision in terms of the process of the aquafence installation, but we really, you know, we really just prefer things to be passive.
Yeah, but that whole neighborhood is going to be one gigantic aquafence.
We know that already. We understand that, the whole neighborhood, but that particular, our issue here again is, of course, we found out through the course of the project that these, you know, it wasn't proposed to be residential buildings, that they actually are residential
Yes,
buildings. So
right.
we have to react to
Yes.
that.
We too.
Again,
Yeah.
given, you know, and again, even Mr. Marino, right? Knowing what he knows now, he probably wouldn't have started the project had he known he was in the middle of the flood zone. But, you know, there's a lot of ifs and whers, and we got to go with the conditions that we know we have. So, again, there's very little I can say, although I'm saying a lot. We're really going to rely on what's presented in terms of the evacuation plan and the safety plans, and we'll be able to make some kind of recommendation to make the project work.
Okay.
But it's not,
Tricky.
you know,
It's
we're not
your
real happy
favorite
campers
project.
right now.
Yeah.
It's
Ours too.
not my most fun project that I work on.
Okay.
Is there any question? There's really nothing that we can do until we really work up the evacuation plan.
Okay. So the evacuation plan, how's this going to work then? So Mr. Ken Drava contacts you directly?
Well, yeah, he'll be working with our engineering department, our technology
Okay.
management, you know, the PEs. I could talk a lot, but I'm not a
Okay.
PE.
But how should the contact go? Should Mr. Ken Drava just
Actually,
contact
we'll have
Tony?
everything go through the board, and we'll have
Okay.
all of the contacts through the board, and everything will be in terms of a formal communication, so that the board is aware of where we are. So the introduction should be made through the board, and the process will be on some kind of a timeframe that the board is aware of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers on this? Okay.
So thank you, and we'd request 6 months, please.
Okay.
I don't know if the chair will close the hearing, or if you can, we'd prefer the hearing to be closed.
We might have to reopen when we don't agree with whatever, but yeah. So it would mean that by the end of the summer, which is the beginning of flood season, you would have everything installed, everything ready to go, installed, accounted for, and everything, right? Okay.
Yes.
So we could say August 23rd.
Thank you.
Okay, and a submission before that, August 3rd submission?
Fine.
But obviously, if there's anything else that comes up during those 3 weeks, you could submit those, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming through.
You gonna close?
Sorry? Oh, yeah, for a motion to close?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Item number 14, new cases. Item number 14, 174-15A through 176-15A, 27 Johnson Street, 100 and 101 Mila Way, Staten Island.
Morning, Chair and Commissioners. Philip L. Rampula. I did not attend the review session, but I did watch the tape. So I'd like to address some of the comments. I'd like to start with the easiest ones first. We did receive fire department approval yesterday. I don't know if the board saw it, but they asked for conditions. They wanted the road dimension on the plans, which we gave them. no parking signs installed by DOT on Johnson Street, and no parking signs installed on Industrial Loop once we get DOT approval. So we will put those notes, the fire department notes, on the plan.
So if you don't get DOT approval for some reason, then then you need to widen the street? That's what we understood. That either the street's widened to 34, or you get the DOT approval for no parking,
I didn't understand that.
right? Isn't that
Yeah, that's
right?
what resident,
Because that's a problem. It's the roads are too narrow to allow parking, but if you widen them, then you could have parking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that's what last night.
Yeah.
the fire department.
They'll speak. Okay.
That's fine. Also, in my statement of facts and my statement of findings, I did put certain fire department standards that the board wants to see that criteria on my plan,
Okay, good.
and I have no problem with doing that. Also, there was a comment to put the DEC,
Yeah, if possible. I know it's a lot of...
there's a lot, there's like a
No,
paragraph.
CPC.
What I understand, with DEC, the DEC, I know it's really a lot, so, and I see that you have a reference on it, but it's more important, I think, that the CPC criteria go on it, because DEC at least has a reference, and the Department of Buildings is aware of DEC's participation, but it's usually harder for them to have access to the plans from CPC, so...
I wanted to address the CPC plans. The action that we filed with CPC was pursuant to South Richmond 107-08, was subdivision only. Within the body of 107-08, and if you look at the city planning approval letter, they approved a survey that shows the subdivision lines. And that at the end of 107-08, it says, lots that are in excess of 5 acres shall submit an area plan that shows the street layout. So what they cite in their approval letter is that my plan is good enough to be the area plan. They're not locking in the size of the buildings or the parking areas or anything of that nature.
Right.
So there's really no conditions from the
okay.
CPC for a subdivision to be put on the drawings.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay.
So I'm correct in that just putting I can put a note under the DEC permit, C permit for additional conditions?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Commissioner Montanez had a question about the gates on Industrial Loop. There are no gates on Industrial Loop. We had them in the beginning, but they have been removed. Meal Away is open to the public. It is a two-way street. Johnson Street is a two-way street. Industrial Loop is just that, it's a loop, it's a one-way loop. And it's, as you come out of our site, it's a right turn only, so we will show the right turn only signs and possibly put up a one-way sign across the street on the other side of Industrial Loop. I believe that was about it for the comments, unless I missed something.
The dimensions, the email I sent you about the dimensions.
Well, the dimensions are, the difference in the dimensions, the board dimensions for the building is what rules. There's a difference in dimensions between the area plan that was approved by, the dimensions of the building, between the area plan that was approved by city planning and the BSA plans. But the area plan from city planning is really conceptual only. It was to show the road layout.
Because the CPC approval is just the subdivision.
Correct.
What about the DEC plan? Because the dimensions of the buildings or some of the area, the distance of the building from the property, those also vary a little bit
Yes,
than the BSA. Which one?
If you look at the shape of those buildings, they're triangular in appearance. We know that we have to design them yet, and there's going to be different pulls and pushes on that building, and we're cognizant of the fact that we will most probably have to go back to DEC for an amendment.
Okay.
So we know that's coming down the road.
Okay. But the lot sizes are the same?
The lot
on both
sizes are
plans?
not going to change.
Okay.
Nor is the road configuration.
Okay. All right. And the last was the builder's pavement plan.
I think it's a little premature for the BPP. I could probably get a letter from DOT about the signage that we're proposing, if that's helpful.
Is that something you want to see?
Right, I had a question. I think in the statement it was stated that it could be, that some of the uses could be retail.
Oh, yes.
Versus, so I'm just asking this question in terms of the vehicular traffic that is going to be created, and it's different for a manufacturing-only building versus when there is retail operation associated with it.
Our concept for this is that they're either warehouse buildings or small buildings like a bakery, and that they would have a little retail component at the front of the bakery to sell their product, but most of it is industrial in nature. I mentioned the retail so as to not exclude it, and it would really be an accessory use and not the main use on the site. If I was to go to retail, then I think my parking would increase, and I'd have a whole host of other issues to deal with.
Okay, so, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, let's see. Are there any speakers on this? Would the fire department like to speak about this? No, we lost Anthony. Was it?
Anthony?
Okay, well, I don't know if they need to speak, but okay. So,
Yeah, he needs to,
he knows. Say what? Are there any other speakers on this? Okay, so what I'm seeing is you're going to, you already did, but did you submit it, to put the criteria for the, what was it, for the fire surface area and signage and all of that on the drawings?
I will put it on the
Right,
drawing.
okay.
I haven't done it yet.
Okay, and you will...
Here it is.
Oh, good. Let's see,
The criteria.
you'll show the right turn only sign. You will either, it's on the drawings, you'll either get a DOT approval for no parking signs or widen the road to 34 according to, unless something modified with them and with the fire department. And what else? I think that was it. Okay. And you'll put the conditions of that fire department approval on the drawings?
Yes, I will.
Right, okay. So, Mr. Scaduto, do you want to speak on this application?
Just quickly. Yes, Mr. Rampula's office, hi, good morning again, Anthony Scaduto, Fire Department. Yes, Mr. Rampula's office had worked with the Operations Division, and basically it's all established in terms of the conditions in the buildings and so on. In terms of the street width, just to clarify what was said last night, I don't even know if Mr. Rampula was involved in the conversation, but our engineering department with Ms. Matias, I think that the thing is basically if the DOT is not going to install or require the installation of the no parking signs, our position is then the road should be widened to 34 in order to continue to allow parking.
Okay,
That's it.
good, thank you.
Right.
All right, so then I think, are there any other comments here? So I think then we can close and you'll make those submissions, okay? So for a motion to close?
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye. Okay,
I think I'll need at least 3 weeks to get a letter out of DOT.
okay, so then that means maybe... Can we do a April 12th hearing?
Yes.
Good, okay.
Submission date by?
Sorry?
Can I just ask one question? So he's going to revise the plan, so I want the fire department to sign off? We want the fire department to sign off?
Well, they've already told you what their conditions are,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Oh, if he
that-
widens the road.
DOT letter and stuff,
Right, okay,
cool.
that's fine.
Just to make sure.
Okay. So then, what do I say, April 12th hearing with a March 23rd submission date.
I just wanted to add, Johnson Street's mapped at a 25-foot width. We're doing voluntary 5-foot widening on our property, so we're up to 30. To get it to 34, if DOT says no, would be very problematic for us. So I just wanted to put it on the record. I'm going to do everything in my power to get to no parking signs. But if that's the case, we'll have to have further discussions.
Okay, further discussions, fire department will have to respond because we rely on them for safety.
Cross that bridge when
Right.
we get there,
Yeah, hopefully we don't have that bridge.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Okay,
Yeah, I
yes,
think that's
okay.
good, yeah.
So then on that thought, did I already say motion to close? No,
Yeah.
We already voted? Sorry, we were talking about stuff we didn't spoke. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
New case, item number 15, 197-15A, 32 Berry Street, Brooklyn.
Good morning, Stephanie Marazzi from Slater and Beckerman for the applicant. This case is an appeal of a decision by the Department of Buildings to disapprove an advertising sign that would be located in an M11 district facing a special mixed-use district. We believe that the plain meaning of the zoning resolution is clear here, and what you do is you look to the plain meaning of the zoning resolution. If there's any ambiguity, you then look to intent. We think the plain meaning is clear based on the definitions of residence district and special mixed-use district, but even if you were to read any ambiguity into the statute, we think there are 3 reasons that the intent of the City Planning Commission to completely supersede the M and R sign regulations for the special mixed-use district with C61 regulations is clear. So first I'll explain why the definitions, I think, compel a determination that a sign facing a special mixed-use district, an advertising sign facing a special mixed-use district, is not subject to the district boundary regulations of 42-561. The definition, so 42-561 prohibits advertising signs facing residence districts. And residence districts are defined in 1210 as any district whose designation begins with the letter R. And the word designation is really key here because that word is also used in the definition for special mixed-use district. Special mixed-use district is defined as any district whose designation is an MX. So by definition, a residence district cannot be an MX district, and an MX district cannot be an R district because their designations are different. A residence district has a designation which begins with the letter R, and a special mixed-use district has a designation that is MX. So when you look at 42-561 and you see residence district there, you know it cannot be a mixed-use district. Even if you were to read some ambiguity into those definitions, there are 3 reasons that I think the City Planning Commission intended C61 regulations to completely supersede any manufacturing or residence district regulations for signs. The first is the City Planning Commission report for the very first special mixed-use district, which really spells out each provision of the special mixed-use district and the intent behind it. And after that first report, subsequent adoptions of MX districts really relied on that first report for the intent and the details behind each provision. So that's the only report that really discusses signs. And it's one line, but it's a very telling line because it says, and I quote, "The sign provisions for C61 districts would replace the sign provisions of the designated districts," which suggests a complete overhaul, that you're not leaving any manufacturing regulations or residential regulations. They're completely replaced by C61. It also, I mean, the problem is also if City Planning Commission had intended to leave any manufacturing or residential sign regulations in place, they should have said so, and they would have said so. And the fact that they, in the report, stated that they were completely overhauling the regulations suggests that that was their intention. The second reason is that the City Planning Commission never amended 42561 to replace the defined term residence district with, for instance, a district allowing residential uses, which is a common way to incorporate that concept in the zoning resolution in other places. So they must not have considered that issue at all when they adopted the MX regulations, and they never amended 42561. The third reason that the City Planning Commission intended to have C61 regulations apply completely in MX districts is the illogical consequence of having a 100-foot boundary in which C1 sign regulations apply around an MX district. Because in an MX district, under C1 sign regulations, you can have signs of up to 500 accessory signs, non-illuminated accessory signs of up to 500 square feet. And a C1 border of a 100-foot depth would only permit signs of up to 150 square feet in area. So you would have this ring of much smaller signs surrounding a district in which you can have up to 500 square foot signs. And I think that when you look at a question of interpretation like this, you need to land on an interpretation that doesn't result in an absurd outcome. So that's my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question. You talk about how an MX district is basically some sort of a merging of the two districts, but not distinct districts, but I don't see that reflected in the definition of special mixed-use district in 1210. It seems as if the very definition, special mixed-use district, is recognizing that there is a residence district, and it doesn't say anything about merging that residence district so that it no longer has the properties of a residence district. I think it actually recognizes that both an M1 and a residence district will coexist in this space, not that they will merge or meld and become something that is neither.
Right.
So could you address that?
I think that the M1 and the R districts provide the regulations that govern in the MX district, but that the MX district is still defined as designated, that its designation is an MX. So even though those regulations govern, it is not, it's both an M and an R, but for definitional purposes, it's an MX.
I'm not entirely convinced by your definition, because the very next sentence says the special mixed-use district appears on the zoning map superimposed on a paired M1 and residence districts, and its regulations supplement or modify those of M1 and residence districts. And so it just seems to me that once you're done reading that paragraph, you are clear in your brain that there is still an M1 and a residence district, and that there may be some regulations that are supplemented or modified, but that still the fundamental nature, residence district and industrial district, still remain at the end of the day. And so that's what I'm grappling with.
I just think for purposes of 42561, it is not just a residence district, it's an MX. And that's how you look at it when you're applying 42561. And I would also say that even if you see the ambiguity, even if you see any ambiguity here, that the City Planning Commission report shows an intent to completely overhaul the MX regulations with C61.
Right, but that may be the MX regulations, but the location of the sign is in an M1 district.
Right.
And so that's subject to M1 regulations.
It is. The sign is in the M1, but it's facing what is considered to be now a C61. And so that 42561 doesn't even apply.
Well, it's not.
But it does apply. It applies to the M1 district that the sign is located in.
Right, that's true. But if you're treating the MX as a C61, then the sign is no longer facing a residence district.
The C61, the text and the report specifically says the C61 is only applicable with regards to the sign. It doesn't treat, the C61 is not going to be applied in replacement of an M1 and R64. any of the other use or parking?
No, just for signs.
Just for
But I
signs.
think that's
So
where the city...
I'm also a little confused as to how that is being extracted as a way to indicate that therefore the M sign should be responding to a C sign and not to the fact that there is a residential district that is mapped there.
I think that's where the City Planning Commission report is very helpful, because it specifically says that the sign provisions for C61 districts replace the sign provisions of the designated districts completely. And if they meant to leave any provisions in place, like the district boundary regulations, I think they would have said so.
Right, but it doesn't change the properties of the residence district. And so the fact that it's a residence district still remains. And so therefore, to me, the M1 restrictions on signage within 100 feet of a residence district is applicable here.
Well, can I just ask you, you said that the word designation is critical. Can you get into a little bit more about that?
Yeah,
I don't know what you mean.
Right, it's because that word is used in both the definition of residence district and the definition of special mixed-use district. Residence district is defined as a district whose designation begins with the letter R. And a special mixed-use district is defined as a district whose designation is MX. So, so when you're talking about residence districts, as defined in 42561, a residence district being defined as a district whose designation begins with the letter R, it cannot be a mixed-use district when you're looking at 42561, because it does not begin with the letter R.
Okay. Okay, can you just think about, I don't know whether you've had time to think about this, but can you think about, for instance, what happens when you've got an overlay district where you've got like a commercial overlay, typically they're C1s over an R. How is that designated?
Yeah, that's a question. I think this has implications for overlays as well. I mean, I think if you're going to treat an MX as a residence, you'd also have to treat a commercial overlay as a residence, and I don't think that's the intention.
Why? Because the designation, like where does designation come into play?
We'll look at that and address
Okay.
that.
I guess I'm sort of having the same sort of issue that Commissioner Otley Brown has expressed, because I'm not sure that the nature of MX changes the fact that MX is to include manufacturing and residential. It's city planning had to call it something. If they're creating, a combined district of some kind, they have to call it something. So sort of to follow your logic, that any time you kind of create a name to express what a combination might be, it changes the nature of that combination. And I'm not sure that that's true. I think that, you have a manufacturing district that's coinciding with, a residence district. It doesn't necessarily change the nature of what those uses are. So I don't see the MX as perhaps something that is, so different. It's just a way of calling out what this district is comprised of. So I'm trying to get over that hurdle in this. I'm not sure that I do.
Right. Well, I would say again that if city planning had intended 42561 to apply to districts where residential uses are permitted, they could have said so. But instead, they still have the definition residence district, which is very strictly defined as a district that begins with the letter R.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Buildings Department?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board. I'm Tommy Vest for the Department of Buildings. I just want to start by stating first and foremost that MX districts are both residence districts and manufacturing districts. And this is clear throughout the zoning resolution, where MX districts are defined both in ZR 1210 and then again in ZR 12310 as being an M1 district paired with a residence district. These definitions do not simply refer to residential uses or manufacturing uses, but actually use the term districts. Additionally, the zoning maps incorporated into the zoning resolution also show that the relevant designations as are, in this case, R6A. I actually brought copies of the relevant zoning map for you guys to take a look at. You know what I think?
You want? No, just keep going.
So the map before you then is, I put together the 12C map and the 13A map, so you can get a clear picture of exactly where the proposed sign is located, and then the designation on the map itself, which does have the MX8 in gray shaded area, but then also directly across the street from the proposed sign, you can see where I've highlighted there, it is an M12/R6A district as well. So yesterday it was noted in the executive session that ZR 11-122 does not list MX districts under residence districts. However, R6A, which is the district located directly across the street from the sign at issue, is listed in ZR 11-122 as a residence district. I would also like to add that ZR...
Wait, could you just slow down for a second? You're saying, it's a little hard to tell because you've greened it in. Is that part of the MX8 gray shading?
It is, yes.
Okay, so, but for instance, the MX8 gray shading has on one side an M12/R6 and on the other side an M12/R6A, right?
That's correct,
Okay.
yeah. So within the MX district, you actually have additional subdivisions there where certain portions are either M12 or M11 paired with an R6 or an R6A.
Or an R7.
So the MX district itself is broken up into smaller districts, is subdivided in that way. So I'll continue then. So since ZR 122, or I'd like to add that ZR 11-122 simply establishes districts, it does not define them. So in fact, the very next provision, ZR 11-123, indicates that each special purpose district listed in section 11-122 appears on the zoning map superimposed on other districts, and its regulations supplement or modify those of the districts upon which it is superimposed. And so this makes clear that these special purpose districts, including mixed-use districts, have an underlying layer of different types of districts, including residence, commercial, et cetera. And then the special purpose district has additional regulations applied on top. That doesn't negate the fact that you have either residence or manufacturing districts within that same overlay.
So just to slow down there a second?
Sure.
So you're saying that the MX district is an overlay on top of both a manufacturing and a residence district? Is that
Yes,
what
I
you're
am saying that these districts are concurrently an MX district, an R6 district, and an M1 district, all at the same time.
all at the same time, but the MX is the overlay?
It provides additional regulations, yes.
Okay, but I'm getting at the word overlay. Is it an overlay district?
It's not, it's different than an overlay. Overlay is separately defined as elsewhere in the zoning resolution. So it's not exactly the same thing as an overlay, it just provides additional regulations that supplement or modify the pre-existing regulations for the district, the R districts and the M districts in that same location.
I don't understand how you can be an overlay and a special district at the same time.
So I think I'd like to take that back, and I
Okay.
misused the term overlay.
Okay, so special purpose districts are special purpose districts.
Right.
Right? So if you're in the theater district, you're in the theater district, right?
But the theater district may also be a commercial district at the same time.
But it's a special purpose district.
It's a special purpose district,
And
that's
then
correct.
but would you say it's a commercial district or would you say it's a special purpose district?
I would say that it's a commercial district with special purpose regulations that apply to it.
Okay, but okay, let's keep going.
So then I would just like to again reiterate that 11-123 states that these special purpose districts are superimposed on other districts, and its regulations supplement or modify those of the districts upon which it's superimposed. So you still have the underlying regulations for the R districts and the M districts, but then you have additional regulations that are superimposed, not
Superimposed
overlays.
sounds like an overlay.
It does, but it's a different word. I mean, the zoning resolution provides for overlays, and then it also apparently here provides for superimposed. And I think superimposed also probably refers more clearly to the map.
Does superimpose appear somewhere in the zoning resolution?
This is a direct quote from the zoning
That's,
resolution.
okay. What are you quoting from? Sorry.
This is 11-123.
It's also in 1210 definitions
And it is
of
in
special
1210.
mixed-use district.
But when you look at the city planning report, it says that the underlying, the M and the residential district will determine the use, bulk, and parking regulations, except as modified by the special purpose district. It doesn't mention signage.
Right, and that's because
So
within-
signage was treated differently.
it was treated differently, and we acknowledge that. However, it's treated differently within the special purpose district, not outside of it. And so we believe that 12340 is only applicable to signs within the district, as this sign at issue is not located within the mixed-use district. 12340 does not apply. Speaking of the report, I would just like to add that yesterday the board discussed the intent behind the report and specifically noted that residents living in the neighborhood zoned with special mixed-use districts will not have the same protections against noise and traffic associated with industrial uses. But conspicuously left out of that description of sacrifices is a reference to the nuisance of signs. In fact, when specifically referring to signs, the report indicates a need to strike an appropriate balance between the virtually unrestricted provisions of the M1 district and the stringent provisions of the residence district. And so that balance was struck by applying C61 sign regulations, which specifically prohibit all advertising signs within the district. So the board also asked that we address more clearly the argument that accessory signs, not advertising signs, are more limited within the 100-feet border of the mixed-use district. And again, I would just like to respond with the fact that the sign at issue is an advertising sign. It's not an accessory sign. This may be a different discussion if we were talking about an advertising sign, but it is, or an accessory sign, excuse me, but it is an advertising sign, a quite large one at that. And so, again, all advertising signs are prohibited within the mixed-use district, and so this is a consistency. They're prohibited within the district, and they're going to be prohibited within that ring, that 100-foot ring. Although, they're not exactly prohibited. They're only prohibited insofar as they have to be facing greater than a 165-degree angle away from the residence district. So they're still permitted to have advertising signs. They just have to face away from the residence district.
But just go back there, because you seem to be avoiding the actual question of the little bitty sign in the M1 facing the gigantic 500 square feet, bigger than a lot of people I know's apartments, right across the street in that mixed-use district. So whether it's advertising or accessory, it's still arguably the nuisance of a big sign is a nuisance for a residential person, no matter whether it says Joe's Pizza on top of Joe's Pizza or it says Coca-Cola on top of Joe's Pizza. So it's still, for me, a big question from a planning perspective, why in the world, if we're allowed to have bigger signs inside, can't we have those same big signs outside? Doesn't really matter what they say.
Well, I think there's two responses to that. And the first one is that the zoning resolution provides for a statutory interpretation tool when you have overlapping or conflicting regulations that would apply. In that case, it says that the more stringent regulations should apply, those that impose a higher standard. In this case, it would be imposing the standard of that this is a residence district, and so for 42561, you can't have the accessory sign.
No, that's only when you have actual conflicting regulations where it's clear that the two regulations apply in the case. In this case, I don't think it's clear that they apply, so the other rule is that you opt for protecting the property owner from overregulation when there's ambiguity. So what I'm I'm hearing is there's ambiguity, there's an absurd result on that border. And so then I look to the planning principle behind it. And so here's my problem with the argument. So in the MX district, the City Planning Commission has said to everyone, don't get any ideas, residents. You're not going to be living in this bucolic environment with a tree-lined street. Right underneath you is a printing shop that's going to be churning along all day long. Hope you don't mind. And also, and on the streets, your neighbors will be truckers and so on. So it's not a residence district. It's a mixture of residential uses that are where the bulk regulations are from both districts are brought in according to which use you're selecting. But the uses are adjacent uses, they're vertical uses. So it's actually, it's what it says. It's a mixed-use district in the sense of I can be living on top of that use. So we're peppered. These uses are peppered amongst each other. So once I see that, then I say, well, then the protections, like the City Planning Commission said, the protections are less for residents. And they're much less in terms of uses, except signs for whatever reason. The commission said, okay, we can't get carried away here. We have to do something about the signs. So we're going to bring them down to a pretty aggressive sign size because C6 regulations are aggressive. So then I actually can't see that it's a residence district and a manufacturing district because that's not actually what goes on in there from a planning perspective. And if we look at what the M1 districts are, M1s usually are step downs to residence districts. And in this case, it's not stepping down to a residence, it's stepping down to a mixed use district that begins with the letters MX. So I'm having trouble with your absurd result. I don't see an absurd result if you don't apply this in this district.
So I disagree with that insofar as you're saying that there are these manufacturing uses that are in the district, and those signs within the district are going to be limited. They're not going to, you're going to have manufacturing uses, which if they were not in this mixed-use district would not be allowed to have, or would be allowed to have advertising signs of very large size, and now you're limiting them and saying you can't have any advertising whatsoever, and then even within your, even within, you could only have accessory signage that's still limited. And,
but it's big,
and so
it's big accessory signage.
It's large accessory, it's 500 square foot accessory signage, that's correct. As opposed to the 750 square foot advertising sign, which is also very big. And that, the absurdity comes in the fact that you can have, as is the case here, an M1 literally right across the street from a residential use, whereas a manufacturing use that may be several blocks away from that same residential use is severely restricted in their advertising capabilities. And so the CPC clearly intended, based on the report and the letter that they sent you, to limit advertising signs and exposure to advertising signs within these mixed-use districts. And so the absurd result being directly across the street, you know, if you just happen to have that street line boundary right there, you can have a gigantic advertising sign directly facing a condo building. Whereas manufacturers 3 blocks away, because they're in this district, can't have any advertising whatsoever.
But isn't it more, I mean, if you want to talk about absurd results, isn't it more absurd that there's the M1 district across the street from a C district filled with, maybe it's even a C1 overlay district, filled with residential uses above the from the second floor up, and your flashing advertising sign is right there in front of the residence? If
So I believe for commercial districts, there's a similar regulation that limits signage that's directly facing residence districts. I'll need to get back to
No, but in the M1, the M1 district that we're referring to, the M1 regulation we're referring to only limits signs that face residence districts.
Right.
It does, there isn't another provision that affects commercial districts, right, for the M1? So the M1 located across the street from the C1 overlay district isn't restricted, and it's staring at residents from the second floor all the way up.
Yes.
So that seems much more absurd, if city planning really wanted to protect residents, than having the advertising sign facing a mixture of residents and manufacturing.
I mean, I think the difference in that case is, again, a commercial overlay, that's considered a commercial, for the purposes of signage. And so this, on the other hand, as specifically spelled out on the map itself, is a residence district. There is an R6A district right there. And so I can't actually speak to the results for city planning and what they intended for that, for the commercial overlays, because that's not actually before us right now. We're talking about the mixed-use district where city planning did intend to limit advertising signs within the district. They also intended that this district maintain its integrity as a residence district. It also specifically says in 12310 that all other provisions not specifically modified herein must be maintained. And so 42561 is not modified by any of the provisions in 12340 or in 123, and so therefore it still applies with equal force.
So just one other question with respect to the commercial overlay. When you look at a district it's an R10 with a C1 overlay. How do you describe what that is? What do we have there? What kind of district is that?
In that case, as far as, I'd have to respond in writing. I'm sorry.
Okay, but do you understand my question?
Yes.
You've got the overlay that says C1, 2, and it's on top of an R10.
Right.
So that sounds like both a residential district and a commercial district, right? Because one's designated with the letter R and one's designated with the letter C, right? They sound like they're both running together according to your logic. But how do we actually look that up when we work our way through the zoning resolution? Do we go to the R district regulations and say we're in a residence district? Do we go to the commercial regulations and say we're in a commercial district? Do we do both at the same time? Like, how do we be both?
Again,
And I think it's relevant to this because it's the research is similar. You go to, I'll answer the question. You must go to this commercial district regulations, otherwise it's a mess, right?
But that's not what the zoning resolution says in this case. In this case, it says you go to the R district regulations and you go to the M district regulations, and...
No, you start off in the MX district regulations. If you don't start off in your special purpose district before you embark on those other two districts, it's a mess, because you'll actually miss an important direction. So just like it is, if you don't start off in the commercial district regulations, even though you're designing a residential building, you're going to be a very unhappy designer person. So you have to do the same with the MX. You have to start off in the MX district regulation, learn what there is to know about that special purpose district, and then depending on what you're developing, you go to the bulk regulations for those two districts. For one of the districts, it depends on what you're developing.
Right.
So I don't see the difference between those two. I need help with that.
Okay, well, again, I'm happy to respond further in writing to that issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
If I may,
Yeah.
actually. The MX districts are almost 20 years old now. Do you have examples of other signs where you've denied them? Sort of similar examples throughout that time.
I know that we've dealt with issues with MX sign regulations in terms of arterial highways, because that's not...
That's where they're mapped.
But I don't know in terms of any
signs facing
them, if that's come up before. I think as far as I know, this is somewhat novel and the first time for the department, but I will double check with that.
Chair, I just wanted a clarification and question you have raised, because as far as I understand, like in the zoning districts from C1s to C6, advertisement signs are not permitted. Advertisements are only permitted from C65 onwards.
Right.
So the question you're raising is, in residential districts with a C overlay, which rule applies? The C rule or the R rule?
Yeah, so because that's a situation where you're trying to be both things at once, but because it's impossible to design a building being both things at once, you have to start off somewhere. And you designate it, therefore, in a certain way. And that word designation is relevant there, and the overlay districts are designated as C districts for the purposes of which chapter you go to first, right? And ditto for the MX district. So that, for me, I do agree with the appellant that the word designation is very critical in terms of the definition, because I have to know where to go first. And where I have to go first is I go to the MX regulations. I don't go to the residence district regulations. I don't get there for a while till I've checked that everything that's in the MX regulation has been taken care of and I'm aware of it, and then I start designing under the residence district regulations.
I would just like to add then that the designation, it actually says in ZR 12310, it actually says designated residence districts in special mixed-use districts. The word designation is actually used there. So they are designated both. And both regulations apply, except when there's a conflict, then 123 trumps.
Trumps, right. But you need to know what's trumping you before you start working on the other side.
But it doesn't.
Otherwise, you design a building, and boy, will you be trumped.
No, absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily completely wipe out all of the regulations and rules of the residence district and the underlying manufacturing
Nor does
district.
the C1 overlay, right?
That's correct.
Because you go into the C district regulations, then I'm designing a residential building, then I go to the residence regulations, and most of the time, for the most part, it sends me to the residence district regulations for bulk, right? So the process is very similar in terms of that.
But unfortunately, I mean, in this case, the zoning resolution does have specific rules for special mixed-use districts and then special rules for commercial overlays. So they're not 100% the same. They are separated out. And in fact, there are actually manufacturing districts that allow residential uses as of right, and that's not the case here either. So
Here where, sorry?
Sorry, in this case, where we're dealing with a mixed-use district, we're not dealing with a manufacturing district that allows residential uses. We're actually dealing with concurrently a residence district and a manufacturing district. So I think that's it.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, are there any speakers on this? Okay, thank you very much.
And so when should I submit the papers for that?
Yeah, so we're going to work
Oh.
both ways. So normally, it's the appellant who submits first.
Thank you.
So we would, of course, like you to respond to the discussion that's been here. If you
Yes.
have further arguments, please make them. How about, what are we talking about, April 12th?
No, Parsons is on that day.
Okay. So April 26th? No, okay, so let's work backwards to see how the submission schedule would work, because, all right, so if we were planning on an April 26th hearing, so you'll get a chance to respond, right? Normally, that's 3 weeks before, so your last submission would be April 6th, right? 3 weeks before that one. Does that work? So 2 weeks before that would be, April 16th, and 1, 2, 3, that doesn't give anybody enough time. I think we need to move that later, so let's just do it like this. 1, 2, 3. All right, so appellant submits on March 16th, and then DOB, 1, 2, 3, on April 6th. And appellant then can submit, you need 2 weeks or 3 weeks to respond?
2 weeks is fine.
2 weeks, fine. Then you could submit, what did I say, April 6th? And then appellant on April 20th? And then the hearing would be 1, 2, 3, well, May 17th. You could actually have 3 weeks then. You could submit, your appellant could submit the response on April 27th.
And then the hearing on May 17th.
And then the hearing on May 17th.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
So it's
316, 46, 427, and 517.
Did I give us 3 weeks? One, two, three, yeah.
Say it
One,
again,
two,
316.
three, yeah,
So 316 for Stephanie,
yes,
46 for DOB,
correct.
and then 427
7 for
for
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
1, 2, did I mess up? I think I messed up. 1, 2, no, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right, 427. And then the hearing would be on the 17th of May. And it's always a Wednesday submission. Okay? Sorry, that takes a while.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Zoning calendar decision items, item number 16, 3114 BZ, 165 Spencer Street.
Yeah, you just, look what it says about. Say again? Oh, okay. So we have to defer, no? We have to defer decision on this.
Okay.
I think another,
It's DEC, right?
yeah,
Scanning.
right.
Why don't we Just give them more time. Just be
Do you want
sure.
to give them 2 months? I don't know. I don't want to mess them up. Yeah, it's air quality.
Yeah,
Should we give them 6 weeks?
yeah.
Okay, so then we could also do, we could do April 12th. I don't know how many we have now on the 12th. Are we all right with that?
Yeah, there's only 5.
Okay.
And none of them were.
April 12th,
Yeah.
submission date?
No, sorry, submission date, then
No.
you want to have them submit on the 12th, or? Sorry.
It's only a letter from DEP.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah, and yeah. it
Okay,
could be
so
the-
any
it could
time
be the day,
before the
yeah.
12th. Okay.
Yeah.
April 12th, okay.
Yeah.
April 12th. All right.
Item number 17, 60-14 BZ, 141-41, 72nd Avenue, Queens.
Good morning, good morning, Jay Goldstein for the
It's now
applicant.
afternoon, but
Good
never
afternoon,
mind.
sorry, yeah, good afternoon. I attended yesterday's review session. This matter was closed and was left open for us to submit amended plans. I understand that there are additional amendments and modifications to the plans. I heard the comments yesterday, and I'll revise the plans. Unfortunately, I couldn't turn them around quick enough.
Okay, I think we need to open this so we just go through some of the issues, okay? Because there might be members of the public here also about this. So for a motion to reopen?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye. Okay.
Okay. Again, I attended yesterday's review session with regards to the modifications requested of the plans. Unfortunately, I couldn't turn them around yesterday. I have the notes. I went through them with Mr. Levy, and I will amend the plans and submit them according to the submission schedule. With regard to the comments made yesterday, the locked gate at the side yard, that egress stair doesn't, the egress doesn't go through the side yard, it goes into the shared driveway. So when you go down the stairs, there's room to go into that shared driveway. During the course of construction, the contractors will have the key to that lock, and it'll either remain open or they'll be in control of that lock. And as noted on the plans already, subsequent to the construction, we'll have panic hardware on those doors, and it will remain locked at all times.
It just didn't appear that there was enough room to come down the stairs and actually make sort of like that right turn and go backwards. It looked as if
Yeah, you
yes,
squeeze
there's-
around.
Yeah, that you can squeeze around it, but you can't necessarily.
There is enough room from what I have seen.
You got like 3 feet? You've got
something
like
that.
36 inches?
I can check, I'm not positive.
Would you check on that? Because it
yeah,
should be at
just
least 36 inches.
Subsequent to the
And-
construction, though, that stair is no longer going to be there. as a means of
I hear
access.
you, but, you know, between now and then,
No problem.
you know, you never know.
Well, let's just talk about, so you said that construction would begin immediately after we did this sort of provisional grant.
Correct.
When does that actually mean?
Upon receiving the resolution, we immediately go to DOB and try and get our permits to start the interior demolition and the construction.
So the drawings are ready to file, or?
They have to, that'll be part of, once we have the approved plans, the final plans, they'll be finalized and filed with
Right,
DOB.
but that's what I mean, are the drawings otherwise ready to file, and all you're waiting for is the resolution and the stamped drawings?
I have to
or-
ask Mr. Caliendo.
Yeah. The reason that I'm asking is because in the meantime, you've got egress of occupants, right? In this kind of
I
strange
can
way.
look at, I mean, in viewing that fence, I'll try and find out how much space there is between the stair and the fence, and then we can come up with some sort of remedy to
Well,
that.
put panic hardware on the gate.
Yeah,
It would-
it's cheaper to just go and,
No, that's fine, if that's the
no.
situation, I just have to figure out
It's the
where to
egress.
put it and which direction. to
no,
put it.
it's simply that you have another gate that goes to the street, as opposed to relying on working your way around this
Right.
much of a
That's
staircase,
fine.
which
So
I
we can
don't really
put
think.
two panic bars and go
Yeah,
straight to
so
that
what
side.
you,
right?
I think the direction is that you need to replace the gate or modify the gate so that it's got a lock from the outside and panic hardware from the inside, right? Okay. So,
With regard to items being stowed by the egress, I've explained to my client that's unacceptable, and as the chair noted yesterday, it'll be made as part of the condition of the grant, and I explained to that to him as well, and the ramifications associated with that.
right.
Finally, the next question was with regards to the children's furniture that's going to be in the main sanctuary. At the end of the day, it'll be removed and put into one of the classrooms, which will be locked. And in the morning, after the adults leave that room, it'll be brought back into the main sanctuary.
Every day?
It's right, there's a classroom right there, and we have, based on the space needs, we need it. You can't leave the furniture in the main sanctuary, and this is the only solution available.
Seems impractical.
What's the time gap between the time the
45
service? 45 minutes.
Approximately.
I can see that protocol will get old in about 3 weeks.
They physically can't leave it in the sanctuary just because the sanctuary will be used, so it'll have to be removed.
Why can't they do the same thing as in, they're planning to do with the children's furniture? Sorry, they're already showing furniture that gets pushed up against the wall.
Those are just chairs. So it's easier to stack chairs against the wall and separate them. These are going to be tables as well.
Tables as well. I think there should be a plan where it's easier for you to organize the furniture within the space. It's just not believable that you're going to move all that furniture out into a room and then bring it back twice a day. Ay, ay, ay.
I'll discuss with my client.
Okay.
It's in writing.
I mean, another option is to have maybe one of the classroom walls, those shared classroom wall, open so that they can move it in easily as opposed to treating it almost like a closet.
I'll pursue it. We'll come up with a plan.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I believe that was all the questions.
Yeah, I believe those were the questions. Any other comments? Did we already close this?
Yes. Oh, you
Right, we
reopened
closed it
it.
before. I wanted to say, just for the benefits of the neighbors who I don't think attended the review session, that the only way for the property to be fixed up is for the school to actually do the construction. And the only way for the construction to be done is if we allow this, we basically grant a provisional grant on this to allow the school to obtain a building permit. Then with that building permit, they will do the work according to our instruction, and if any of it is not done according to their instruction, we add our conditions. We will bring them back here for a compliance hearing far sooner than what the leash is, we call a short leash approval, to have them explain themselves in a compliance hearing. So we're going to be vigilant about this. They need to comply with all of the conditions, which include not being disturbing to the neighbors during construction. And then once construction is completed, then we'll we'll have another hearing, and we'll look at how you've done, and we'll consider the length of the next, what I'd say is provisional approval, just because there's so much of an issue about relations with the neighbors. And then at a certain point, ideally, everybody is behaving properly, and at a certain point, this could be a longer-term approval, okay?
Understood.
So what I'm suggesting here is a 15-month provisional approval to give them enough time to complete the construction and get a certificate of occupancy, or close to. I know that their timeline was longer, but I just think that's too long. I don't really know why you need that much time to complete construction. Because you're not building an office building, you're building you're renovating the interior of a building. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion. Can I close without? Yeah, I think I need to ask for speakers. So are there people who would like to speak on this? And please, when you speak, please tell us new things, not old things, okay? Because we've gotten all of your testimony submitted, and we've heard from you very often. And so if it's new information, you're welcome to give it to us, otherwise, we've heard you.
State your name.
My name is Dennis Shore. We're a neighbor next door, 141-35 72nd Avenue. Commissioners, Madam Chairperson, I just want to say I want to thank you for the objective way that you've been reviewing this case, and I know that you've been taking the neighbors' concerns into consideration in everything you've been saying and doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, good morning. I'm Sharon Marquez. I just wanted to say thank you the way Mr. Shore did. I am humbled. I thought this case was closed, and I saw the tape yesterday on YouTube. You have reopened the case. You looked back on our concerns. They were glaring. They were not just going to be glossed over like in a bureaucratic way. And it makes me a lot less cynical and a lot less hopeful for the future of our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. Okay, so on that, is there anything you wanted to add? Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to close again.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye. And then I'd like to make a motion to approve, but on a very long list of conditions.
Madam Chair, I think we need
you
a
need time.
submission schedule, yeah, because I have to do the submitted plans with the amended plans.
Oh, right, rats. Okay. you have-
I agree, but...
You agree?
I agree, but
Still had
I
a minute. Okay.
can turn it around fairly quickly if I can get on for, the March 8th schedule, if that's enough time? If it's just
So wait a
a
second,
decision.
so the amended plans are for dealing with, I closed already. Never mind.
The amended
Okay.
plans are just to respond to what was mentioned yesterday at the review session.
Okay.
They were marked up,
Yes, I have.
so he has the marked up version with the requested
Oh, right,
revisions.
right, because he didn't, I imagined that you made those changes already. Okay. Rats. All right, so then, the reason I'm saying rats is because we have an incredibly full hearing schedule. I don't know how to do this.
Hopefully I get it right, it's just for decision.
Yeah, it's just to make sure those changes are made, so.
Yeah, okay. How much time do you need for that?
A week, not even. I mean, I can probably get it by the end of the week, but a week is, if I can do it by Tuesday, it's great.
Okay. So March 8th, then that would mean you have to submit it by the end of the
3rd.
week.
By the end of this week.
Yeah, can you do that?
Sure.
So for decision on March 8th, much as I hate this. And I
mean,
don't
I'm here
want,
anyway on the 22nd if it's easier for you.
they're both
Okay, so
insane.
then keep it March 8th.
Yeah. But for the benefits of the neighbors, because for a vote, it takes 2 seconds and we don't discuss the application, I'm just going to read what the conditions are. The only thing that they're submitting, can I do this now? We closed? I hate this. I'm trying to avoid.
Just read the conditions, just read the conditions.
I'm going to read the conditions. Okay. It's just so that you know what the conditions are, and then we're just going to vote, and the submission is just drawings. So it will be that sprinklers, fire alarm, interior elevator installed, a metal picket fence along the side yards with lock gate condition will be installed, There'll be a requirement for carpooling and drop-off controls, that a DOT drop-off zone is created if it hasn't been created, that once operations begin and the applicant returns for a renewal, the board may require busing to avoid traffic congestion if it's not working out like this. There's noise attenuation at the rooftop play area. There'll be no lighting or amplification at all on the roof play area. The use of the synagogue by adults only when the school is not in session. There'll be supervision of the students on the exterior. Maintaining the property at all times, even during construction, free of debris and graffiti. The trash, as shown on the plans, must be stored on the building interior and brought out immediately before pickup. That the side, front, and rear yard areas shall be kept clear and free of debris. That's a repeat of the other. That no storage of any kind in the rear stair or that rear alcove near the right-of-way or in the right-of-way is permitted. And that maintaining the construction site with a fence surrounding the property and construction supplies must be done in a neat and workmanlike manner, and that the rear drive in front of the property needs to be repaired. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you for coming. Okay.
Item number 18, 12914BZ, 2137 East 12th Street, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, Jordan Most from Sheldon Love LPC.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to grant this, but on one condition, that the amount of walls that, or not the amount, the actual location of the existing walls that are shown on the plans as approved will be retained. Otherwise, the special permit will be void. That's in the interest of maintaining the minimum amount of floor area to constitute an enlargement. Okay?
Okay.
So on a motion to grant on condition?
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 19, 9515BZ, 1203 Jerome Avenue, the Bronx.
Is there anybody here for this?
I guess Eric stopped out.
No? Okay. Eric stepped out? Should we just do it? Okay, so for a motion to grant?
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Item number 20, 16915BZ, 93 Wirt Street, Manhattan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
So I think I closed this, so I need to reopen for us to just discuss this details. So for a motion to reopen?
Chair Promoter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Hi. So we talked about yesterday that Criterion had suggested a column wrap for the wall ball. So, and they had said that,
It's been completed.
yeah,
The column is, the construction of that has been completed and shown on the drawings.
oh, really? So Criterion suggested, so it's a little
Criterion
confusing.
suggested yet another suggestion if that didn't work, but it's working.
It's working. So, in other words, it was tested with a 20-pound ball, and it wasn't disturbing the neighbors, is the point? Was this actually tested with Criterion involved?
Yeah, it's been tested.
State your name, please.
Ezra Levy, operator. Yeah, it's been tested. We've been using the 20-pound wall ball, throwing it up against the column, had people upstairs in the lobby. There has been no noise or any vibration issues, and Criterion had said if there were ever any issues, we could then insulate the outer layer as well. And as I mentioned in our last hearing, if that were to not work or work for the council, we're happy to remove that as a wall ball target and put those singular targets off of squat racks.
Okay. So something was done with the column?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is everybody okay with that? All right, so then I open, so are there any speakers? So for a motion to close?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye. And for a motion to grant?
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break?
Oh,
Just
all right.
10.
10-minute break. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are we having a lunch break or are we then going straight through?
We're on.
That's great. That's going to be like a long.
Back on the record.
We're back on the record.
Camera's on.
The camera's on, everybody. Let's go.
Okay, we're back on the record. We're back on continued hearing items, January 21st. Item number 21, 32213BZ, 4201 Main Street, Queens.
Jordan Mose from Sheldon LaBelle. Good afternoon. I know we had asked for an adjournment, but I wanted to engage the board in a discussion of, as we reviewed the resolution history again, and I know we had presented a plan that I think I complained of as being a particularly unworkable parking plan that had historically been approved. And I say approved in quotes because in reviewing the resolution history, while it was plans that were accompanied BSA approvals, it doesn't seem so clear that that was actually an approved plan. And that the plan, I think that there is in fact not necessarily a specific layout or plan that was approved by the board. That there was an approval for parking, but not specifically that plan or that layout. In fact, the original approvals dating back to the 1950s refer to parking for more than 5 vehicles. And that there wasn't necessarily an approved plan referenced in the resolutions or stamped by the board. And what we request or ask is that, I think because this is the plans that we've showed to the board are, I think, and the board has seemingly acknowledged that they're difficult and tight layouts in the context of valet-attended parking. That we'd ask the board if there's a way to amend this application to reduce, well, I don't even know if it would be that because it's not so clear that the number of vehicles were actually ever approved, but to recognize a reduced parking layout that is actually more workable. For instance, we've been talking, at least at the last hearing, about a number of stackers that the board had indicated they'd rather have them in the C1, in the commercial portion of the zoning district, of the lot. But clearly, there's a portion of the lot that's along, the only 2 spots are the portion along Maple Street, which has a modest fence that would make any stackers over there visible to the Maple Street frontage. And the other side, on the Lot 77 portion of the area, is actually, now that I visited the site at the board's behest, is a downward slope running down from the commercial district to the building. And looks like a very difficult place to actually install stackers in that location. So again, what I'm asking is that...
Can I just ask you a question
Yes.
about that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't there an architect who's actually making these recommendations, who might have looked at this before we went on that route?
I don't want to overstate, I think I'd rather not overstate that. So, so what I've proposed, so we have a situation where we've been really striving to reach this 87 parking space threshold on this lot. And we have a concern that it's not so feasible or workable really in a practical layout. Unless the board really requires and demands that the only way to achieve that number, I think, is with a number of stackers, some of which may have to be 3-story stackers, which are not really practical for restaurant-type visitation. is an awkward and cumbersome activity on this relatively small parking lot. So what we'd ask is whether the board would, if in an amendment or a change to the application, that the board would consider a reduction in the amount of parking that is going to be here in a more workable plan.
Isn't this a catering facility?
It is,
Isn't
but
this
it's
the
also
part
in...
where everybody and his mother come?
But it's
to
in
the old
Flushing.
lives?
It is in downtown Flushing, so it's
Yeah.
accessible, it's accessible a lot of different ways to people other than driving. And the difference of 5, 10, or 15, or even 20 cars, I don't think is and we can, if we need to, we can look into that deeper, isn't going to have a significant or material impact on impacts outside of the four corners of this property. No one has been here or complained of parking or traffic impacts relating from this. This is a busy area already, and this is a place that's been functioning like this for many, many years.
But you had an illegal enlargement, which
We did.
increased the parking requirement.
Right.
We did, and so that's a very specific, I can't hide that. That's a very specific increase in square footage to the building that has a plain and clear requirement
I
for
think
about
it
16 vehicles.
Exactly. That's a
Exactly.
significant increase.
Can I add, as much I'm a transit advocate and I'm for minimizing car parking, I was involved with this community board from my day one in city planning days, and if anything little I know about this community board has always advocated for more parking, if not less. And this is right in the heart of downtown Flushing. And I think before any such decision is being proposed, I think getting a community board's take on this which should be considered, especially given the fact that there was an illegal enlargement, which resulted in increased parking, and now we are asking for reduction of the parking, and that is completely contradictory, and it puts us in an awkward situation. I don't think we want to.
There should probably also be a traffic
Yeah, of
parking
course
demand
there-
study
yeah.
to determine what the need is.
Yes.
Yike. Well, what about this, though? Why can't you be looking around for some deal where maybe you'd be in the, whatever it is, I don't know if it's a 600-foot radius or whatever, within some reasonable distance for parking, because there are municipal lots and other things?
There's parking across the street, across Maple, I believe there's a garage, I think there's a garage on Franklin. There is parking in and around the area.
I don't mean just generally parking.
Right.
I mean parking where you have a contractual relationship and you're providing your parking, because you haven't exhausted that as an option, that it's an off-zoning lot parking solution, right? That's permitted as of right.
We can explore that.
Or permitted by special permit where we extend the distance, for example.
I think I'll ask the architect, I'm not sure what his experience is in working this type of a layout, but I guess then what we'll try to do is pursue one of those two courses where we can show that if we have an arrangement for off-site parking in conjunction with a traffic study that shows that maybe some reduction in parking is somehow acceptable, and that Community Board 7, that's a tall order, all three of those items, I think, that Community Board 7 is somehow behind that. And then alternatively, we will take a harder look at figuring out how to reach that 87 number with a workable layout. But I think it's...
But you could reach the 87 number with off-site parking where you have a contractual relationship.
Right, some combination of...
It's an ownership relationship, right? It really needs to be a restriction on that property that's permanent, or lasts as long as this use lasts.
Okay. Otherwise, I know there are a number of other things that we have that are not sort of, I would characterize as non-negotiable items that are site-related things that need to be addressed, be it painting and cleaning and addressing the way they're recycling. I know that, I think since we had talked about the recycling, how that's addressed, I think you had noted that someone, I don't remember who it was, that large number of boxes and debris are tossed out of I think it's the second-story window next to where the garbage is disposed of. Well, it's a portion of the parking lot, it's a portion of the lot in between two buildings. But what it really needs is an enclosure. It's actually cleaned up every day. I mean, there's a huge amount of boxes that are actually broken down. There's one person whose job it is solely to break down those boxes for pickup every evening. And I think it just needs to be squared off in a proper enclosure so that it's not visible and doesn't tumble out into the parking lot. So there are a number of things that, and the planting issue also along the residential side. So there are a number of things that we will address. I'm just trying to, this is a much more to the heart of the matter and bigger picture item, I think, that we're trying to work out.
Okay, so as to not waste everybody's time and to not have to keep seeing you on,
Yes.
no offense.
Yeah,
but-
that's
right. Could we at least get those cosmetic issues just done? And while you look into your argument for parking either off-site or a reduction?
Certainly, whatever painting needs to be done and the recycling enclosure, those things should be able to be done in relatively short order.
Okay, so we've been saying that for a while, so it shouldn't be as relative to the last time we've said that. Okay. So what kind of time do you need to make those things? And this time, they really need to be done. I don't want to have another hearing where you adjourn because they haven't done them.
Right. While it doesn't feel like winter out, I guess I'm concerned about doing the planting in what's still February, so.
No, you wouldn't do planting in February, you would do it in March is the classic time that you plant. But we could have a hearing at the end of April, like April 26th.
Okay.
That way, rain showers.
Yeah, we should be able to do it by then, right.
Okay, so April 26th for the next hearing and a submission on April 6th. And if the planting occurs in those weeks in April, you could always submit photos of that, okay?
Okay.
Are we good, though, on the plans with where the planting was supposed to go?
I think so. I think, we were talking about, just when you enter the parking lot, the straight ahead, the back wall is the wall that's along there's a chain link fence between the parking lot and a residential yard and building over here.
Right.
This is, as you'll recall, this is the tall wall and the parking structure along the long wall over here.
Yeah.
Where there are some windows up high, as I believe the Vice Chair noted, in that building, much higher. But, so I think this was a wall that didn't necessarily require that treatment. It was this wall.
Okay, so these are not to be planters in boxes?
No, we
know
understand.
that, right?
I tried that cell, but I think what we'll do is, what there is a very small 2 to 3 foot wide curb that can become just a normal curb with a planting section then between it and the fence.
Okay, good.
We understand that.
Right. Okay.
Just also by way of note, just for an indication of some progress, I know that the plan examiner at the Department of Buildings who had been handling this is no longer at the Department of Buildings. Everything was recently refiled to address some of the issues with respect to Lot 77. The elevator violations have been cured. There were 3 specific elevator violations. I think they've all been addressed, and I think the boiler violations are about to be cleared as well. So, in spite of just seeing me every once in a while, there are some people working on this project.
But in terms of that, you were going to withdraw the open alt one?
And that's relating to what's just been refiled again with the new examiner. That is paramount importance, we understand, so we're working on that as well.
Okay, and then, let's see, the trash areas.
Painting, enclosure, planting, right.
Okay, parking code, provide amended plans. You were going to provide amended plans also? Remember that was way back in December. You have a photo showing the wall completely restuccoed on the exterior, but you were supposed to do the interior also?
That's what I mean by, yes, that we're
Yes.
going to, painting, that was my painting is to make sure that the entire site gets whatever treatment is appropriate, as you indicated, that if I took a trip out there, I would better
Okay.
understand that.
Okay, okay. All right, so are there any speakers on this? So what do I just say, April 26th with a submission on April 6th, right? Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you.
Item 22, 33013BZ, 29801 Brown Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, they wanted to adjourn this, I think April 12th, is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, 12th, okay, so adjournment till April 12th with a submission March 23rd.
Item number 23, 4114BZ, 2137 Waverly Avenue, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, Jay Goldstein for the applicant. I attended yesterday's review session. I apologize, last week, the end of the week, I was out of the office for personal issues, and therefore I was unable to submit the documents required. I'll do that in my next submission or sooner. With regard to moving this project along, in response to the board's comments, I've instructed my client to hire a construction manager or project manager. I'll be working closely with the project manager and with Mr. Singer and Mr. Saul to ensure that we get this reviewed by DOB, and that DOB tells us what work can be done, how they want it done, et cetera, in a timely fashion. In addition, I started speaking to Mr. Scaduto yesterday from the fire department regarding the board's comments with regard to the sprinkler system, and we'll research the matter a little bit more, and hopefully, if the board is correct, hopefully we can save that money and apply it towards the school in other ways. But we'll do so in hopefully an expedited manner, with the construction manager and with myself being more heavily involved.
That's great, because that's one of the things we kind of noted, that they're sort of spinning around themselves, and that's why we're not making any progress.
Right, I think a lot of the confusion is the process is new to us in terms of filing or doing Alt 1 work before Alt 1 is approvable or things like that.
Right,
But
right.
I'll work with Mr. Singer to try and get it handled expeditiously.
Right, I mean, installing sheetrock doesn't require even a permit, frankly. And when you're modifying exits, you have to get approval, that you do need a permit
Right.
for, but you could be modifying exits for any kind of alteration, even an Alt 2, right?
Okay.
It just needs to be reviewed in terms of its ultimate use.
Correct, so we'll work with Mr. Singer to figure out the best approach to go to the Department of Buildings and have it reviewed.
Okay, so, but ultimately, what I think would be the most helpful is if you were to meet with staff who try to set up something also with fire department and DOB in the same room together to work out what kinds of things should be done in the project.
Okay.
That would be the most efficient.
That's fine, I'll work with Mr. Singer to figure out, I guess, chicken before an egg, let him have time to review the Alt 1 before we have a meeting or vice versa. We'll figure it out on the staff level and go from there.
Because what I don't understand is the architect who prepared the drawings that we received way back in April, it seems as if that was his suggestion about alternative means of egress,
Right.
but that they were not reviewed at all by DOB in any way. So we don't know whether it's necessary, whether it's the right way to go. Some of it, I was
Understood.
trying to follow the egress routes, and I didn't quite understand what he was getting at.
Understood.
But obviously, he had something in mind, and should go through it with DOB and with fire.
Understood.
And that's why I thought a meeting where staff and those two agencies are all together, we might be able to work something out, given the existing conditions in the building.
Okay, appreciate it and
Okay.
understood.
It was very helpful to go and see the interior and especially to see the sprinkler system there.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so,
I would ask for some time on this, for personal reasons and not, beginning of April is going to be extremely busy for me. End of April, beginning of May is probably better for me, just to keep everything moving.
okay, you're talking about in terms of coming back for the hearing.
If you were thinking-
But in terms of moving this along,
I'm going to speak to Mr. Singer
Yeah,
today, and
okay.
I already spoke to him today, and I'll speak to him tomorrow to continue on that
okay, it's
conversation.
okay to come later for the hearing, but things have to be going on. in
No problem.
between.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so end of April, like the 26th of April, something like
Do you
that?
have if we're working on a schedule with Mr. Singer, then maybe, Mr. Singer, maybe you have a suggestion of timing for all this, and we'll go from that. Maybe we need a longer delay just to let things happen.
A DOB and a fire department right away. That could be in March, that could happen, right? So I think the end of April, you'll probably just be reporting on things.
Right, so maybe I could do that by letter without a hearing and then come back
Yeah,
and,
the end of May.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's say May 24th,
Yeah.
and you submit a letter on May 4th.
Okay, and in between, I'll speak
In
with
between,
Mr. Singer.
tons of work will be done with the construction manager, that's
Got it.
great. Improvement,
I will
great,
get you
okay,
everything.
thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you to speak?
Oh, are there any speakers on this? Sorry, thanks. Thanks for that pointer.
Item number 24, 269 14 BC, 8944 Metropolitan Avenue, Queens. This is an adjournment
Okay,
request.
yeah, adjournment, are we okay on the 26th, or is it too full? Okay. Okay, so we're going to adjourn this to April 26th with a April 6th submit date.
Item number 25, 203 15 BZ, 44 Union Square, East Manhattan.
Okay, I recuse from this. Have a nice
Get out.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeff Mulligan from Kramer 11 for the applicant. We attended the review session yesterday, and we understand that there are still outstanding issues on financials and deliveries and trash storage and removal. So we'll deal with the financial questions first, and I'll bring up Jack Freeman to address them.
That would be fine.
Commissioners, good afternoon. I'm Jack Freeman here on behalf of the applicant. Attended the review session yesterday and pleased to hear that almost everything was good, and there was still an outstanding question related to the financials. We spoke with staff on several occasions, and they indicated that you would like to see a presentation of what the ratio of the net operating income to the development cost is for both the lesser variance and the proposed, and we'll be glad to do that.
Okay. All right. And I also, if it turns out that your lesser variance is showing some sort of a return, then you can justify why it may not be an acceptable return for investors' consideration. If you have any backup information, reference documentation that would state that even though it is showing as if there is a positive return, investors probably would not take that risk because it's below what is a general developer expectation.
This is not a typical method for evaluating a project. And when you look at the net operating income as a relationship to cost, there will be a ratio, which will be a positive ratio.
Right.
We've done that, but the ratio for the proposed is somewhat higher. And I think that demonstrates that the proposed would be providing a more reasonable return. And we'll speak to that.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
So you'll be providing that to us?
Excuse me?
You'll be providing that to us in a written form that we can...
We'll provide it as a letter,
at this
and
moment.
it'll be included in the response that the applicant makes.
Good, thank you.
Along with the numbers?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Mr. Mulligan?
So as I understand the concern with deliveries and trash removal, we obtained a waiver relating to providing one loading dock, and the concern is that without the loading dock, the products being delivered to the building will have to be transported from a truck parked on the street over the sidewalk and into the service entrance. And you'd like to know what our plan is for that. And you also have questions relating to the adequate width of the service corridor, the service elevator, and the trash room. So Todd Poisson, the architect for the project, just distributed some plans that clarify the ground floor and the cellar. and he's going to speak to them, so.
State your name for the record.
Hello, Todd Poisson, partner at BKSK Architects. So as Jeff just mentioned, we just gave you 3 sheets, 2 of which you saw before with new notes, and a third more explanatory clarifying diagram sheet. So page 1 is the cellar floor plan, illustrating a trash room, lower right, off the service freight elevator. It's 240 square feet, 20 feet 7 inches by 11 feet 9 inches. That size is more than the what's recommended for LEED buildings, leadership in energy and environmental design buildings, for a commercial buildings between 50,000 square feet and 100,000 square feet. Actually, it's a little over. The LEED requirement is 225 square feet. Our building is roughly 70,000 gross square feet, including the cellar level, so we're at midway in that range, so we feel 240 being above 225 is more than adequate for this building's trash room.
Is there a compactor in that room?
There is not.
There is not. So it would just be holding, what, boxes? and-
Daily broken down recycling boxes and trash from upstairs. So the idea being each night, the tenants, individual companies, cleaning companies bring trash, or during the day as trash piles up in their floors, it's brought down by their staff to the trash room for being held during the day. If they don't have space on their floors, the 240 is more than enough for, if they don't have room on their floors for that. And then at night, it is brought up the freight elevator to the sidewalk. Every night, for a commercial building, there's pickups Monday through Friday for office, and 7 days a week for retail.
What about for, like, garbage? You know, like garbage as opposed to trash. Trash meaning, like, you know, boxes, et cetera, but garbage meaning
Food waste.
perishable
Yeah.
food waste, yeah.
So there's no food preparation, not that there's no restaurants, but any food waste of that nature would be somewhat small scale, and it would be in part of that room, bags in that room.
And those will also be picked up every night?
Correct.
So there would be no garbage overnight?
Correct. Yeah, unless the, inclement weather, et cetera, that the carting company can't come, but their typical contract is every day, Monday through Friday for office, and 7 days a week for retail. But the room would be big enough, more than big enough for overflow or inclement weather.
Do you have to separate the office and the retail trash?
No.
It's done in the room?
Yes, there would be separate spot in that trash room for the retail and the
And then you'll have somebody on the site who will bring out the trash right when the carting company comes?
Correct.
Even if that's in the middle of the night?
I don't know the scheduling of it, so there is a building manager who would be on site during business hours and to whenever the arrangements are made for him to be there, he or she. They have an office on the first floor, right off the service corridor, to kind of monitor this situation.
But all trash and garbage would be put on the street for pickup every day?
Correct. At night, typically at night. Page 2 is I also understand there was a question about the storage room, on page 1 in the cellar. It was previously called Con Ed/storage vault. It is a vault that happens to have a Con Ed steam pipe in it, but Con Ed does not have access to the space.
So this exists?
It's an existing...
And it was constructed for Con Ed, but you can use it as storage?
It's unclear why it was constructed. The steam pipe runs the length of the street. It continues east and west of our particular vault. Our building does not use the steam from the pipe. The pipe just happens to be going by. The vault was constructed when Tammany Hall was constructed in 1928. It's used as ad hoc storage right now. We are applying to DOT to legalize the vault as a storage room for the building.
Concerning your note, tenant to provide elevator from the first floor and retail space, Do you have a general idea where that takes place?
Well, we'd be happy to show it, but whenever we plan ahead for a retail tenant that we don't know yet, we always pick the wrong spot. So
Where's your ideal spot?
right where that note is, frankly, right to the right of that note,
Okay.
in that third bay off of Union Square, off the southern wall, far enough off the southern wall so that its cellar pit doesn't require underpinning from the southern neighbor, but close to basically the right side of that note would be the ideal spot. in
So
our
you would
minds.
have a service elevator and a passenger elevator installed?
No, there would be a single elevator that would be mandated for that first floor tenant to connect to the cellar so that their freight can be delivered in the morning via the same way everyone else's freight is delivered throughout the building, because that's
This
the...
is for all 4 floors? There's
No,
4 floors of retail?
there's 3,
Okay.
plus the cellar,
Right.
yes, 4. But only the first floor is currently disconnected from the freight path. So the concern was, how does that first floor retail space receive goods? So the idea is they would receive them, much like everyone else, through the freight corridor on the eastern end of the property, to the freight elevator, down to the cellar, and then over to their space in the cellar, and then directly up in an elevator that we have not prescribed, but one would exist to go up to the first floor.
Okay, what about ADA access for shoppers?
So that would be that same elevator that would be...
That would have to go to all 4 floors.
All 6 floors are accessed by the 3 other elevators on the plan, but correct, if the retailer is 2 floors, 3 floors, 4 floors, they would need that elevator to continue.
Yeah, but the retailers wouldn't be using the office elevators.
Correct. Correct, I misspoke for a second. However many floors that the retailer on the left occupies, that ADA elevator would connect to.
So there has to be, you're saying just one elevator
see it as one elevator
for customers, and you're saying you can use the same elevator for freight?
Correct, because we see that...
Between the first floor and the basement and the cellar only?
No, you're right to say that elevator, that one elevator, would go from cellar to as high as that retailer goes. 2nd floor, 3rd floor.
But what if it's a different, the broker said there could be 1 to 4 tenants. So I'm saying, there's a different tenant on the 3rd floor.
Right. So...
That first floor tenant is responsible for providing ADA access for the entire building.
If there's a separate retailer, if there's more than one retailer, that they're likely to be stratified horizontally or in slots on the plan. And whoever uses the cellar would certainly get, whoever has access on that first floor, who does not have direct access off the freight hallway on the first floor, they would need an elevator down to the cellar and a way to get to the freight elevator on the cellar. They also need handicap access to however many floors they happen to occupy.
Right.
So they could have multiple elevators?
So it could possibly have multiple elevators.
Right, because you probably wouldn't utilize your freight elevator
For your customers.
Well, the loading it depends, I imagine, on the size of the store, that the larger stores receive loading before stores open. So you could imagine it could be shared. But above the first floor, the freight elevator accesses the retail space, the main freight elevator.
Right, but I'm just thinking right now for customers. If you have multiple tenants, you don't have like a commercial lobby for people to go in. I mean, they would have to utilize space in like the first floor tenant area to install an elevator to go up to the 3rd floor. I don't see why you don't just make plans to put in an elevator. And then, even if it's not in the location that you select, that you can come back to us for a letter saying, okay, we're going to relocate the elevator. But it just seems to make sense to me that you plan to have an elevator to provide ADA access to all the retail space.
Yeah, I think maybe what would satisfy our curiosity on this is if you could identify what, understanding that tenants may change their mind, but I'm sure, identifying that particular area that you called out, saying, location of, additional elevator as required, and show that on however many floors it would need to be, to be able to service it, I think would be fine for us. At least it would satisfy me that at least we thought about this, put it to bed. We understand that there's going to be additional circulation and how that would work.
Should we say location subject to change?
I actually
Or
would
change-
like
show it
a
somewhere.
note that says that the elevator location is subject to change, because then we won't have letters of substantial, let's avoid a letter of substantial compliance, please.
But then you also need to install an elevator between the cellar and the first floor for that.
Yes, but he
Retail
could
tenant.
For whomever.
make the same notation showing the same area. I think that would be
Okay.
acceptable.
Okay, great.
So that would explain how to provide circulation within the building, and you're saying that the corridors are adequate, even though the doorway from the circulation area into the first floor, the cellar retail space appears to be only 3 feet wide.
No, it's an oversized door. We
It is?
didn't dimension it on the plan.
Okay, all right.
It will be.
We could clarify that, yeah. It'll be a 4-foot door, similar to the 4-foot door on the ground floor fragment plan on page 3. So the elevator doorway is 4 foot. The elevator itself is industry standard for commercial buildings up to including shopping malls. It's almost 8 foot by 5'8" clear in the cab. We're doing a 6-story Nike flagship downtown, which is with the exact same freight elevator. The 5-foot path is industry standard for freight corridors. So it has a 5'6" clear opening at the street front, 2 open doors. The pinch points are at the 5 foot, so the wider parts of the corridor are over 6 feet wide. The dotted lines on page 3 show the clear path, show the path of a pallet being pushed on a hydraulic pallet hand truck. Very industry standard. The U.S. standard pallet is 48 inches by 40, and they would be the pallets would come directly off the truck, and that would be the largest deliveries expected in this building. Other deliveries would be UPS and FedEx, but the larger retailers, if there is a large-scale retailer, would be coming on pallets that size, directly off the truck onto hand trucks, and then the hand trucks go down the corridor.
Okay, and I guess then the other question would be the actual physical location of the truck and how you're going to unload it into the building without obstructing sidewalks or, interfering with pedestrian traffic.
So, much
But
like-
you can't, secure a parking area next to the door.
Right, so much like any New York building without a loading dock, the benefit is the truck doesn't have to cross the sidewalk, I imagine. That's a good thing. But you're right, the trucks would park on the street. Back to page 2, the direction of travel is to the left. It's toward the west. It's a one-way street. There's no parking for the first 100 feet off the curb. There's standing, but no parking. But then the last 50 feet of the property, as is the rest of the street down to Irving Place, it's commercial vehicles only, 3-hour max. So trucks would be parking against the curb directly on our side of the street and unloading. The building manager or the staff, there is a staff office on the ground floor off that corridor who would be expected to monitor the sidewalk, and what would be crossing the sidewalk would be those pallet trucks, the hand trucks, the small-scale pallet trucks.
And what's the width of the sidewalk there?
15 feet.
So you might have to be parking on Union Square and bringing pallets all the way around?
I imagine that is a possibility. What we've noticed on the street is that there's often available parking on the East 17th Street side, especially towards the front where there's no parking, but you can stand and do quick unloading.
Can you put all this in writing?
Sure.
Okay.
Any other questions for the architect?
No, not for me.
Mr. Mullin?
Oh, I think that was it, yeah. Now, you mentioned the Con Ed vault area, that you're going to apply for that, to legalize it as storage. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we can submit quickly within a week? Within a week, we can make the submission.
I'm sorry, when can you submit?
Within a week.
Within a week?
Yep.
Let's take a look. Oh, I'm getting that look from Mr. Singer.
Are there any speakers?
Oh, yes, are there any speakers? Seeing none, we can move on.
It's just the bid. It's just that March 8th is, yeah, I think we can close it. It's just that where do we put it on for the, it's just the 8th is crazy.
So what's the best?
The 22nd is also crazy, but I think this is just about, right? Okay.
Mr. Mulligan, I
Yes.
think we can put you on for March 22nd, and we're going to close.
Okay.
And pending a good report from your financials, we can close now and we'll vote on the 22nd.
Okay.
So when can you get us your?
Well, just within a week. If there's,
Yeah.
Okay, so we're what? This is the 23rd, so you get us something by the 2nd of
Okay.
March? And we will vote this out on the 22nd of March.
great.
So motion to close.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chalmers?
Aye.
Thank you.
See you on the 22nd.
All right.
Yeah, I think we should break from this.
Yeah, break for lunch.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you want to break for lunch?
Okay. So we want to just take a break? Okay.
For lunch.
So, all right, so we're going to break for, what, 20 minutes? 20 minutes, and we'll be back in 20 minutes. We've been going straight. Okay, thanks. Back by 1:40,
Yeah, so it's
1:45.